Hey everyone, it's Stefan and Tatiana. Welcome back to another podcast episode with us. The first one that we did is up on our YouTube channels, Tatiana James, Project Life Mastery. You can also watch or listen to it anywhere that you get your podcast. But last time we talked about a lot of different things. Today I think we want to go deeper and discuss a variety of topics: investing, success, building online businesses, being parents, a lot of that good stuff. And we're just going to allow ourselves just to organically go with the flow and whatever comes up and whatever we decide to talk about. But we know that'll be incredibly valuable for you guys. I think you can get some good nuggets from this because we do have a lot to share. So where do you want to
there's a lot of juicy topics in here. So I think the best place to start is with the investing, because that is something people are always curious about. We're both investors. We invest in many different ways. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
I think like our investing strategy and style has kind of changed a little bit over the last few years. So first and foremost, we've both always had the mindset of being long-term investors. We're not traders. We're not looking to make a quick buck, buying and selling in the short term. We very much think long term. That's how we've always been throughout our financial career, even with our businesses. Our business, we always kind of approached it as a vehicle that could allow us to make a lot of money. It's something we have more control over. We can make as much money as we choose to make in a business because there's no limits on how much money you can make in a business as opposed to having a job. And so our businesses were always vehicles to generate a lot of cash flow. But of course, when you're making a lot of money, what do you do with it? And that's, I think, where a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs, or even people that have jobs, they don't think quite enough about, because that's really what's going to create the financial freedom and abundance that you want long term.
But I think if I can just interrupt, like what you said is important. We are long-term investors. We aren't trying to make a quick buck. And so we are quite risk averse with our investment style. But by comparison with our businesses, we do take more risks with our businesses than with our investments, because we have more control over our businesses, right? When it's our business, we do have more control. Investments, there's only the perception of control, but there's a lot that's out of your control. So we recognize that. And I think we've been very conservative with the decisions we've been making with investing. And so we know that, high risk, high reward, but we're not after the high reward. We're after just the slow and steady. And it does win the race. Like we have, it's a good market now, but we have done pretty well. And it's what has allowed us to live in this lifestyle to now, be semi-retired, et cetera. So I think that's important to mention, that we're quite conservative with our investment style.
We've never put ourselves in a position where we're risking more than we can afford to lose. There is, a percentage of our portfolio that we invest in more volatile, high risk investments, cryptocurrencies, certain individual stocks and companies. And there's been, many of which we've lost money on, but overall we've made a lot more than what we've lost. But I think that's really important. But I'd say, when you've made a lot of money and you've kind of already had enough home runs, I find that your mindset kind of shifts a little bit to preserving your wealth.
How can I protect this?
Versus when you you haven't made it quite yet, you're kind of looking for opportunities that could be your big break and can allow you to break through and create that financial abundance that you want.
But also the general rule of thumb is, the younger you are, the more risks you can make. So in terms of your portfolio and how it's divided, as you get older, you have less time to make up for losses. And so the younger you are, the more risky investments you can make compared to as you get older.
I think, one misconception that a lot of people have is I'm always amazed how many people do not invest. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so many people I come across, they're like, oh, I want to get into investing, but either that they're like, I don't know how, or they just think that they're going to do it eventually when they have more money.
But it's because it's really intimidating. It really is intimidating.
But it's not. It's like, it's so simple.
It's not. Once you get out, you have to equip yourself. That's why knowledge is power. So equip yourself with a basic knowledge and understand that you don't need to know everything in order to get started. And I think that's the key limitation, is that people think that, I need to know everything because my money is my asset. I worked so hard to make this money. I want to preserve this money, and I don't want to make any mistakes and lose it all. So I have to know everything before I can get started. But then they never get started because you aren't going to know everything.
Like when I first got into it, I got into investing when I was 18, and I basically was given a book called The Wealthy Barber by David Chilton. And it was basically this story about this Canadian guy, David Chilton. He was on Dragon's Den. Eventually, he's like a financial guy, but he basically, shares this story about getting advice from his barber who is wealthy. And you think like, how is a barber wealthy?
Barber's wealthy?
And it's basically just because like an average person, if you just take a certain percentage of what you make, you put it aside, you pay yourself first, 10% of what you make, and you just put it into, at that time, like a mutual fund. Like today, like mutual funds are not really worth it because now there's index funds that are a lot more popular with a lot less fees. But basically you just put that money into an index fund, and every single month you put in 10% of what you make, or 5% or 20%, whatever that amount is. Eventually it compounds. And if you have enough time on your side, decades, you become wealthy, you become a millionaire. It's not that complex. And so for me, like the power of compounding, a lot of people don't understand, how beneficial that is, how that can transform your life no matter what situation that you're in right now. You could be a janitor, and if you just allow a certain percentage of your money to compound year after year, decade after decade, when you're in your 60s, 70s, or 80s, you could be incredibly wealthy. So for me, because I was given that book at 18, and I was so young and just naive, I just like had such an open mind. I accepted everything that I learned. I was like, wow, that's amazing. I just started doing it. That was ingrained in me, that long-term mentality. And I think especially if you're an entrepreneur, you really do have to think about planning for retirement and think long-term, because for both of us, when we were building our businesses, we never paid into pension, because the way that we would always get paid from our businesses are through dividends. And so through dividends, you're not paying into, at least in Canada, you're not paying into your pension, which is a percentage that gets taken off of your paycheck if it's a salary or your unemployment insurance. And so that's like a tax in a way that you're saving when you're an entrepreneur, but you have to have the foresight to put aside that money for your retirement, because knowing you're not going to get a pension down the road. And for me, I'd much rather be in control of my money than have the government depend on a pension, which, apparently a lot of people might not be getting, in the future. But
yeah, so I think what you touched on, I want to highlight it because it's one of those very basic principles of investing. It's like Rich Dad Poor Dad book, it's teaching some very basic principles. So but they're life-changing. So one of those life-changing principles is the understanding of compounding. And then also another life-changing principle is understanding what dividends are and how those work. But if you understand compounding, then if I were someone watching right now, I would make it my top priority. Every paycheck, the first however much you can manage. Is it $50? Is it $100? Is it $200?
$20 a month, then it became $50 a month, and then $100 a month, and it just grew from there.
So whatever you think you can manage based on your circumstances and your lifestyle, that's the first thing that you do with your paycheck. It's not go and pay your rent. It's not go grocery shopping and buy. It's taking that money and putting it into your investment, because your investment is investing in yourself, investing in your future. So it is a top priority. And that over time, the younger you start, the better, of course. So for those who are watching who are very young, this is a huge advantage for you in your lifetime.
Type of thing.
Yeah. So go, set that up today. That is for your future.
For me, I took this so seriously when I was young. I did this. I made sure that I always kept this as a habit in my life. I did this even when I got into credit card debt, and retrospectively looking back, it probably would have been better to prioritize paying off my credit card debt, because that's a high interest debt, versus, putting it to something in the market that might only return 6% or whatever. But I was so obsessed with that, that idea, that concept. I knew the power of it. That I was just like, no, I cannot stop this. I cannot break this. This is and I knew that becoming wealthy would be inevitable in my life. Even if I fucked up in business, made all these other mistakes, at least I would have that. And that was really powerful for me.
And you know why?
And even over the option of it, investing in my own business, I still always kept that. I never swayed from that basic financial advice that I was given at a young age, because I just believed in the power of it.
I think it's because you particularly, you're obsessed with your future. And I think that's what made you successful in many ways, because you always focused on it. You always fixated on what it is that you wanted and believing that you could have it. But I think for those watching, to get a better understanding on the power of compounding, go on Google and type in compound interest calculator. And it will really show you that over, a period of 50 years, and by the time you're 80 years old, how far your money will go if you make the same investment every single month. And so once you understand the power of it, I think that's going to motivate you to take action with it. So that's one basic
I think
element of investing.
Yeah, and I think oftentimes people, they struggle with the long-term idea because they don't want to, be rich later. They want to be rich now. But my mindset was creating both. Have this for my long-term, but simultaneously work my ass off in my business and pursue other opportunities. And that's not to say also that you can't have a percentage. You have to determine what your allocation is, but a percentage to be more high risk. And if you are younger, maybe you can, often when you're more older and retired, your portfolios can be a lot more conservative because you don't have as much time. You need that money a lot sooner. But when you're younger, yes, sure, go for some home runs, have some that's conservative, that even if you fail countlessly, it'll still ensure your success. But yeah, you can strategize in those different ways.
Yeah. So the compounding is one basic investing principle that is life-changing.
Yeah. And just, yeah.
And another one is understanding dividend-paying stocks. Yeah. For me, that was a big deal because we both invest. We have separate portfolios, but we have a similar way of investing. And I have a lot of different stocks in my portfolio, but a lot of my stocks that I invest in are dividend-paying stocks. And the reason being is because every quarter or so, it depends on the investment, I get paid a dividend that I didn't work for. That is truly passive income that I get paid as a shareholder for putting my money into this stock. And if you invest in multiple stocks, that a little bit adds up to a lot. And so Stefan and I combined, our dividends combined monthly is enough money. It's more than enough money to pay for our lifestyle. And so when you actually wrap your mind around that, that means that if him and I don't work for the rest of our lives, considering the current stock market, we have enough income every month that comes in that we could afford our lifestyles. Now, we don't take any of that money out. We always reinvest all that money. We have it on a drip, so it reinvests automatically for us. But that's a really powerful principle as well. So this is truly passive income. Now, we talk a lot about passive income on our channels because it is powerful, but most ways of creating passive income, it's not truly passive because you're still going to require some of your time investment. There are some things that you have to require a lot of time investment up front, and then over time, as you outsource things and automate things and get things set up, you can remove yourself more and therefore not invest so much time. It becomes more passive. But you usually have to check in from now and time again. And it's not truly passive. But these dividend stocks are truly passive.
Yeah. And I think going back to also people being intimidated by it, it can be very intimidating, yes, to invest in individual stocks. But instead, what we more focused on are index funds or exchange traded funds, ETFs, because then you can own a whole basket of companies, a whole basket of stocks, because one risk that you might have investing in an individual stock is what if they cut their dividend, right? What if they're less profitable? What if they have to cut it? Then you're dependent on that source of income. But if instead you're investing in, let's say, the Vanguard high yield dividend ETF, well, this is one stock on the stock exchange that basically, gives you exposure to all these dividend paying companies. And if one of them cuts their dividend or whatever, it's not going to affect things, and they can even replace this company with another company. And so it's a lot more stable and secure way of getting those dividends.
Yes.
And ultimately, kind of like the passive income you get from business is a bit of a myth in some ways. Yes, it does exist. You can set up a business in our case, we haven't really worked on our businesses for the last year plus, and we still got income coming in. Because we did something one time, we set up, products, we set up systems in place that we set it and forget it, and it still makes us money. But that has a life cycle. Eventually, if you're not putting time into it, if you're not updating it, if you're not maintaining it, then sure enough, it slowly declines. Because it requires a level of management. And the world, the internet's always changing, versus instead, if I invest in a company, a stock, in many ways, I'd much rather invest in these companies than in myself in some ways, because these companies are more likely to exist for a longer duration than ourselves. It's a lot more, in a way, stable, because what happens if something happens to myself or Tatiana,
Yeah.
and you can no longer produce that income, but instead you're investing in a company that, there's there's a board of directors, they can replace the CEO, they have a lot of resources
They
and
have
assets
some of
that
the top minds who are working on
they're a
this.
lot smarter than us. They can ensure they can outlive us. And even that's something that I often think about with our wealth and having it be generational. I want our wealth to outlive us and to have it be in a trust so that, our kids, our grandkids, our great grandkids can benefit from that, because it will continuously grow our wealth beyond our lifetime. And so that's one of the benefits, I think, of thinking in that way, is how can you have your money grow?
So that's another good principle. So breaking it down for you guys. So one, if you're going to, go back and you're going to invest your time into learning a few basic concepts of investing so that you have enough courage to get started. One concept is understanding dividends. One concept is understanding compounding, and another one is understanding index funds. And to give you guys a bit more of a definition of index funds, this is, if you a lot of people, when you think of investing, you think of investing in one single company. For example, the big ones, Google, Facebook, Tesla, right? But these are individual companies. So if anything does happen to that company and you put your money into it, well, you're at a loss. But a fund is composed of maybe hundreds of companies. So for example, one of my favorites is the S&P 500, and that's composed of 500 of some of the top companies in the United States. And so what happens if one of those 500 companies, goes bankrupt, or who knows what happens to it? Well, you know what? There's still 499, and they are constantly replacing those with the best. So if they are no longer, they're no longer performing at a certain level, they will be replaced. And so when your money is now invested into a fund like that, that's a much more conservative investment. That's a much less risky investment for you. So understand that principle as well, because if you're afraid to pick individual stocks, which is something that you need to do with vigilance, because you need to really understand the stock. You need to understand, there's a lot that goes into understanding a company. But when you're investing into a fund, that gives you a lot more ease, knowing that that money has been diversified. That's another principle. Learn about diversification. Yes. That's the key to investing.
Honestly, I think to simplify things, what I would say for most people is just go out and buy the book, Money Master the Game by Tony Robbins. That's a book where he interviewed the top 50 of the wealthiest billionaires, investors, and basically a lot of them, what they all conclude for most people is just focus on index funds. That's the advice of Warren Buffett, that when he dies, he wants the money that his kids and his family is going to inherit. 95% of it is just going to be in the S&P 500.
Not even in his own.
Not even in Berkshire Hathaway. So, that says a lot. And so kind of going back to our style and what we've been doing is we've been more transitioning into being more passive, because also investing in individual companies, it does require not only the research up front, but also keeping up to date with what's going on in those companies.
Yeah.
It's
hard to be passive with that.
Yeah. You have to be active. Yeah. You have to there's so many factors and things that can affect a stock. Mm-hmm. The war, in Ukraine, inflation. For example, we also owned Alibaba, which is a great company. We've worked with Alibaba on our YouTube channels and all of that. We've used them in our businesses in e-commerce, but certain changes in China and the risk of that, can cause the stock to crash.
There's just so much out of your control.
Yeah, politics, all these different things. And so we both kind of learned, I think, through that journey, because we went a little bit crazy during the pandemic when there was a big crash in March of 2020. We bought companies that we wouldn't normally buy because they were so cheap. And we've just been sitting on them for the last few years. And now we're in a position where we've both been selling off and taking profits, because right now the market's been doing really well. Taking profits and reinvesting and kind of reallocating our portfolio, rebalancing it to move that money into those index funds like the S&P 500, the high dividend yield ones. Another one I like is the Vanguard Information Technology ETF. Basically, it's more like a tech-heavy, ETF. To real estate ETFs, a whole variety of different ones.
Which, by the way, real estate ETFs is a great way to dip your toes into real estate without actually owning and managing a property, because that is a lot of work. This way you can have some money in real estate without all the headaches and the cost of owning a property.
They're called REITs, real estate investment trusts. So, I mean, and also I think one of the other things that I think we both realized is financial freedom. There's different levels of financial freedom. And I've kind of talked about this before, but there's obviously the level where you can do what you want whenever you want with your money. You don't have to worry about your expenses and whatnot. But I've noticed that in many cases, having a lot of money, and especially when you've got your money invested in many different individual stocks and companies, there's a level of mental consumption, of like the mind, like I found myself kind of focused a lot on money and worrying about it, or, kind of some scarcity around that money or managing it. And I thought, like, is this really financial freedom? And the kind of financial freedom that I want to create in my life is the level of financial freedom where I don't even have to be consumed by money. I don't have to have it on my mind all the time. And I can have this as an area of my life that I can check the box at and say, you know what, I've got this taken care of. It's providing the income. I don't have to worry about it. It's going to grow long term, but now I can live my life rather than being constantly consumed by this thing called money. And that's a level of financial freedom that for me has always been the goal. And so that's why kind of moving more to passive investments and, being a bit more conservative, not getting caught up as much in all the volatility and all the ups and downs and all the drama and all the other things, and have to manage my investments. That's a lot of work. So being more a passive investor has been a really big key for us. I
think it's also really up to the individual and your personal, your personality. If you're very volatile and you get nervous easily, you have to understand that investing is an emotional game, and that if, the stock market itself is not based in any reality. It's based on the overall sentiment of a population. Yeah. So if the sentiment is low, if, for example, the news comes out tomorrow that, another pandemic is hitting, well, even if it doesn't happen, even if it was fake news, well, the stock market will probably crash like it did when COVID hit, because now people are fearful. So it depends on how people feel. And so for you as an investor, if you're someone who's very volatile, and as soon as the stock market goes down, you're going to freak out and you're going to pull your money out, well, you need to be careful with that, because that's how people lose money in the stock market, right? Yeah. And understanding, like, another principle to understand is the overall trends of a market, and understanding, like, when is it a good time to buy and when is it not a good time to buy, and when is it a good time to sell and when it's not a good time to sell. And you're never going to get it perfectly. Nobody can predict the market, but understanding trends is important, understanding the overall trend so that you don't become super pessimistic and feel like, well, this is the end and it's never going to go back up, because it always goes back up.
Yeah, not freaking out when there's a crash or a recession or a correction, because those are just parts of it. And
they're predictable, in fact.
Yeah, and when you have a long-term mentality, then you're just like, oh, it's fine. It's opportunity to buy more.
Yeah.
And for both of us, we have a hard time selling. Like, I don't like to sell. I just like to sit on it long-term, because that's really actually difficult to sell. Like, I've been really good at buying, but then knowing when to sell is also difficult. And that's the challenge when you're an active investor, is like you have to try to time the market and whatnot, versus just long-term, sit on it, and let the decades go by. And then eventually when that time comes, especially if they're in index funds, like, I want to own investments that I can hold forever.
Yeah.
And those are the S&P 500 and other indexes.
So we're more keen on selling individual companies. Yeah. So if they are at all-time highs, for example, we just sold off our, was it Shopify?
No.
Which one was it? Recently we sold off something. It was at an all-time high. It was like a tech stock. And it's fine. Like, great, this is now a win, because you always have to understand that just because the stock market is high doesn't mean that, you're making that money. You only make money when you sell and you now pull a profit from that. And understanding that the stock market is volatile, it might be high today and low tomorrow. So I do think that it is important to sell sometimes, because that's really how you can make your money. Yeah. But, being very strategic about that.
Well, when you sell, what are you going to do with that money?
Well, you're going to invest it into maybe more like index funds, for example.
You're just going to reinvest it. You're just going to rebalance your portfolio, right? So and that's kind of why.
Or you sell, and now like we can talk a little bit more about diversification and how this is a very important principle of investing. So we are heavily invested in the stock market, but we also realize that we got to diversify, because even though we are diversified within our portfolios, it's still all the stock market. So diversifying our investment in other ways, whether it's investing in other businesses, investing in real estate, investing in our own businesses, we've realized that, we need to diversify our portfolio a little bit more. So we diversified by purchasing real estate, not in the way that is most profitable, where you're maybe buying single family housing and you're renting that out. That would probably be, single family or not single family, multiple family homes is going to be more profitable. We're buying homes that we want to live in and that we can use for part of the time. And then part of the time we could rent it out. And so it's not the most profitable way of doing real estate, but it's a way that works for us because we want to get use out of these properties.
And part of it goes back to that preservation, because again, when you don't want to have all your eggs in one basket. And so when you do have a certain amount of money, you might think, well, I don't know if I want to have everything just in the S&P 500, because even though that's like what Warren Buffett preaches and what he would do and recommend, because then you're overweight and overly exposed just to the U.S. economy. Yeah. What if the U.S. economy suffers and it gets replaced by China's economy? So, what if the U.S. dollar is no longer the reserve currency? So like you have to play out different scenarios in your mind of things like that. And so then, we also own an index for basically the top companies in the world that exclude the U.S. economy, right? So that way we have exposure more to Europe or China or Latin America, other places, right? So you kind of like want to, kind of hedge against that. And then you might think, well, what happens if basically, the banks and the currency and just all, the way that people live financially gets disrupted, in which case maybe you want to have exposure to cryptocurrency, right? So what if that becomes more the dominant currency in the world? Like you have to think decades from now. And that's why you want to hedge, against your current investments and have some exposure there. And you might think, okay, I also want to have some precious metals like gold and silver. And then of course, real estate as well. So for us, it's having that diversification and protecting yourself, that if one investment class, if one sector of the economy and the way things have been done crashes or is not quite the same, then you're still protected. And even, for example, like having your money in a brokerage account, having your money in a bank account, we've now seen over the last few years how banks can go under, how an exchange, a cryptocurrency exchange can go under. We've seen examples like that, even how government, can freeze your bank accounts and take money, like there's all these things that you have to now factor in as ways to protect yourself. So that's why maybe you want to have some physical asset, like physical gold, physical silver, not just, buying like a gold stock,
but even going to another extent of thinking, well, if my money is all in this one bank, how much of my money is actually protected, insured? Right. And you'll realize that, there's only $250,000 or $100,000 of my money that is insured. And so then you go and you put your money in multiple banks, and you can overthink it, but part of the way that you balance your portfolio, this is a pie chart, is by thinking of all the what ifs. And that comes with time. But, I think that that's what can be intimidating about investing, is that you feel like, well, I haven't thought about all the what ifs. There's all these different scenarios that I haven't thought about. But understand that with time, you will learn those things. And I think the most important takeaway is to get started with it, because it can change your life. And start with something that you feel comfortable with. Don't push yourself in a way that doesn't feel comfortable. If it doesn't feel right, don't do it.
Yeah, and I think that's why just basic thing that someone could do today, get Money Master the Game by Tony Robbins, open up a brokerage account, whether it's with your bank or one of the many that are out there, and transfer some money in and just do dollar cost averaging. Just put a certain amount of money every single month. Don't even think about it, and just put that into like the S&P 500. And then as time goes on, sometimes you're buying when it's high, sometimes when it's low, but overall, long-term, decades from now, that's going to be worth a lot more.
And even if you open up a brokerage account and you put little to no money in it, the fact that you have it open is really valuable, because if the stock market does crash tomorrow, you now have an account that you could invest from. So for example, when COVID hit, we saw like the opportunity for investors when COVID hit was because, you know, the market crashed. And so as you know, when a market crashes, that's not the time to sell, it's the time to buy. And so, for example, I was messaging my brother and I was like, hey, like, are you investing? He didn't have a brokerage account open. And so to actually go and open it, you know, that takes time to do that. So he lost that opportunity. So to have an account open actually is quite valuable for, you know,
it's funny because during March of 2020, when the market crashed, each employee on my team, I sent them some money as a bonus, and I gave them a couple $100, and I said, here's what I would do with this money. You can do whatever you want, but what I'd recommend right now, the market's crashed. There's a huge opportunity. I'd recommend you invest it. And I'm curious to know how many of them actually did. I know Steve did and Ty, they both learned from Project Life Mastery, I guess, and kind of, I know, followed in the footsteps of that. But if people did that, it'd be worth a lot more today.
And honestly, guys, getting started is the hardest part. So just by opening that brokerage account, that's going to really set you up to feel more courage to get your feet wet in the world of investing. So just taking that first step.
Yeah. All right. Well, how about we transition now to another topic? One thing that we wanted to talk about was just success and creating success. And obviously that's a huge topic that's changed our lives. Everyone defines that differently in their own life. Obviously there's financial success, but there's success in many different areas of your life. And I kind of look at, for me, my definition of success is very different than what it was before. Mm-hmm. It's different than just what society kind of projects as what is success, because I look at holistically every area of my life.
Yes.
And unfortunately, our society doesn't quite recognize, I think, to the extent that they should, the value, the importance of someone being happy, someone being a great parent, someone having a great relationship, great health, great overall well-being and quality of life. I look at that as much more valuable than just someone that has a lot of money. Oftentimes I'm not that impressed if there's someone that just someone's introduced as a speaker in front of an audience or YouTube, whatever, that they're really successful. Well, I often think, okay, so what? Okay, how about all the other areas of their life? Because yes, you could be very successful financially, but that doesn't mean that you are in all those other areas.
In your relationships,
the grand scheme of things,
health.
All those other areas are way more important, than just making a lot of money and being wealthy.
Yeah, or equally important. Mm-hmm. And I think, I hear you on that.
To an extent, though, when you don't have money, then the money is important. But once you're at that point where you do have it, then all those other areas are going to give you much better return in your life than just making more money.
I am 100% in agreement with you. I think that living a successful life is living a life that you feel joyous every day. And how can one feel joyous every day? Well, usually it's because all the things that you value in your life, which is why it's important to understand what you value in life, get clarity on what you value. And so if you value your relationship, your intimate relationship, if you value your relationship with your kids, if you value your health, if you value your success, if you value your spirituality, if you value your fitness, okay, if these are your top values in life, then you need to be focusing on these values, on these areas of your life, and investing your time into them so that you grow in those areas. And success is growing in those areas. It's not achieving any kind of finished goal. It's always going to be a work in progress, but the success comes from feeling like you're growing in the areas that you value in life. And so for you and for myself, we oftentimes kind of take some time to sit back and reflect and think, okay, I want to be 8, 9, and 10 in the top in these areas of my life. I want levels 8, 9, and 10. I want to feel great about my health. I want to feel great about my relationship. I want to feel great about my spiritual connection with God. And if they're not 8, 9, and 10, then that is my indicator that I now need to be focusing more of my time every day to getting those levels to 8, 9s, and 10s. And that's how I'm going to feel really great about my life. That's how I'm going to feel like I'm a success. Not if I just achieve a financial goal. Because how many stories have we heard of people who've achieved amazing successes financially, but then they're miserable? Or, they have, success came at a cost to them. They became successful financially, but it came at the cost of their health. They're overweight, or it came at the cost of the relationship. Now they're getting a divorce because they didn't put in the time into the relationship. They sacrificed that for far too long. So we want that holistic view of success. And I think
Life mastery.
That is life mastery. And that's why I love that you named your channel Project Life Mastery from, 8-9 years ago. That was always at your forefront, was like, I want success in all these areas.
Yes. I think, I'm a big believer though, that at times you need to make trade-offs and temporary sacrifices in areas of your life in order to focus more on an area of your life. Because I think it's very difficult to create success while simultaneously trying to be equally balanced in every area of your life, because to really create success is like a very extreme condition that requires a tremendous amount of energy and focus and just going to an extreme in order to create something like that.
Yeah, and true success.
When I look at the success that we created, it was kind of putting other areas of our life kind of a little bit on pause, like not neglecting them completely, but just really trying to go all in on one area of life. And then once you get to a certain point, then rebalancing your life and trying to ensure that when you do that, you're not creating damage to these other areas of your life in the process. So for example, like as you refer to, damaging your marriage to the point where you're ending up in getting a divorce, damaging the relationship with your kids, damaging your health where now there's no coming back. Like we still always made sure in our pursuit that we still did the basics, the minimums of relationship, your health, social life, etc.
You can't completely neglect any one of these areas, because if you do, it will die. So the key with that's true. I agree that sometimes like success is almost like an addiction. You have to kind of go full in if you really want to create that financial success. But it works if the two of us are in alignment with that goal. We both understand we're not going to have hurt feelings if you're working or I'm working and unavailable. And we have an agreement on when it is we're going to spend quality time together. Maybe it's not as often as we used to, but for now, while we're both grinding, you have to have some level of an agreement and understanding for that to work. Otherwise, what ends up happening is one person has, decided that my goal is to make X amount of dollars and I'm going to do whatever it takes to make that without even letting their partner know of that goal.
Right.
And then they go all in and then they're totally unavailable and their partner's feeling completely neglected. And then it's the beginning of the end of the relationship.
Yeah. You have to, if you're in a relationship, you have to be aligned with the vision, the direction that you both want to go, what you want to create for yourselves. And you have to understand and accept that journey that you're going to embark on together, and still have a negotiation to determine your relationship. Like the way I always kind of looked at it, because people often ask like how you kind of manage your life. I think like it's actually quite simple. Like for your health physically, there's a certain amount of exercise every day, right? So maybe that's an hour a day, even if it's 45 minutes or maybe it's a couple days out of the week. But that's an area of your life that if you just commit, let's say that 1 hour a day, and then, that's the only time that it really requires in order to really make sure that you're taking really good care of that area of your life called your health and your fitness. Of course, there's the diet and what you eat, but that doesn't really necessarily take more time, maybe preparing food or whatever it is. But, for me, like I like very efficient meals. Like I make a smoothie every day. That ensures I get a lot of great nutrients and everything. But like, that's kind of all you really need to do for that area of your life. And then your relationship, maybe you determine with your partner that you have 1 or 2 days a week, and that's date night. That's the time you spend quality time together. Right. And then your friends and your social life. Okay, maybe you have, a day out of the week where you go with your friends, you connect with them. And that kind of ensures that area of your life, at least maintained. Right. So there's kind of ways, like for me, it's never really required that much to maintain those areas of my life. And then with the other waking hours that I'd really just dedicate it on creating myself and the future and the business and the freedom and the results that I wanted in my life. And that's what I could do with all that other time that I had.
Yeah. So again, that comes back to understanding what your values are. What are the most important areas of life to you? Because most people, they're totally unaware of what they value in life. And so what happens is they wake up every day and they just get pulled in whatever direction is attracting them first, wherever the demands are realistically. And so like you said, it's quite easy. Like my takeaway from if I were a listener right now would be, okay, get clear on what my values are. If I want to lead a successful life, a life that I feel joyful about, then I want to get clear on my values. I want to do one thing. My intention every day is to do one thing for each of those areas of my life that I value, whether it is, going to the gym for 30 minutes, whether it is, having a smoothie every day, whether it is reading my kids a bedtime story at night, doing a meditation, touching one small thing every day. Doesn't have to take up a lot of time for these areas of life. And that will feel like a successful day. And one successful day will compound to a week of success, a month of success, a year of success, and you're going to feel like a successful person. And it has nothing to do with how much you're earning on your paycheck. And trust me, when you start feeling good, when you start feeling like a successful person, you're going to start earning more, because it's how you exude. It's an energy that you now have within you that people want more of. They feel your energy and they are attracted to it. And so, I have a question for you. Why do you think that people say success breeds success, or the rich get richer?
Well, I think when you get results, it reinforces your confidence and your belief. And that confidence belief allows you to tap more into your potential, and you take more action. And then as you go through that cycle of getting more results, then it just
I think that's itself. Okay. And then also one might say that, well, when you achieve some success in your life, that must mean that you now have experience, because you don't just achieve success overnight. Like there's experience that comes with that. And there's also connections. And so there's, that can be pulled and used towards your next success. And I think that's all true. But I think what's also true, and people don't really touch on, is how when you achieve a goal of yours, something that was important to you, and you achieved it, you feel really good about that. And it's that feeling good, that place of feeling good, that propels you towards the next place of feeling good, towards the next success. And so I think understanding how when you feel good, life starts to get better. And it's like, that's why success breeds success. It's how you feel, and understanding the importance of how you feel, because otherwise, when you're unaware of how you feel, oftentimes the mind, when we don't dissociate ourselves from our thoughts, we think that we are our thoughts and that we don't have any control over those thoughts. And those thoughts run wild. The mind is made for your survival. It's not made for you to be happy or joyous. It's made to keep you alive. And so if you let that mind just run wild, then you wake up in the morning and the first thing in your mind is all these stressful thoughts, these not good feeling thoughts. And those not good feeling thoughts, they bring on more not so good feeling thoughts. And so it is, it's a self perpetuating. Yeah. And so what I would do is I would wake up every day and I would try, and this is what I do, is I try and bring an awareness first thing to my thoughts. The first thing in the morning, because it's a fresh start. And I think, okay, let me think of something that feels good. What feels good? Anything. It can be something super simple. The less attachment you have to it, the better. Maybe it's the thought of butterflies, or it's the thought of the sun, or whatever it is. And that simple thought of feeling good will bring on another thought of feeling good. And so my goal in my day is to feel good and bring in awareness to when my emotions are changing and when my thought patterns change, because we all have thought patterns. And so when I'm feeling good, then I can come from this place of inspiration. And from a place of inspiration, that's when things in life become easier. That's when you start to flow downstream, and the things that you want in your life start becoming attracted to you. Whereas oftentimes people are swimming upstream in life, because we've all been conditioned to think that if you work harder, that's when you achieve what you want. And it's true. if you work hard, you probably will achieve what you want, but you're going to have to work hard. There's another way of getting what you want where you don't have to always be swimming upstream, where you don't have to achieve what you want with so much resistance. Maybe it can come easier to you when you're in that state of flow, and that state of flow starts from feeling good. So my top priority every day, if I want to lead a successful life, if I want to make more money, if I want to have a great relationship, is to feel good. And so bringing awareness to those feel-good thoughts and encouraging more of those to flow through me. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't feel bad thoughts, because as human beings, I think what makes us special is that we have this emotional spectrum. And on this emotional spectrum, there's a million different emotions that we can feel. And that's what makes us so rich. That's what makes us feel so alive. And we only know what feels good because we know how it feels to not feel so good. And it's that contrast that's valuable. So I think when you do feel an emotion, if you feel sadness, I think the important thing is to allow yourself to feel sadness, but you don't attach yourself to your sadness. Sadness is just an emotion, and it's not who you are. It's not a character trait. We all have these emotions, just like there's moments where you feel happy. There's moments where you feel sad, and accepting it and allowing it to flow in your body, to cycle through. And, within 10 minutes or however long, you're going to feel a different emotion, and allowing that to be there. So I'm not saying resist any negative emotions, but I'm saying that bring your awareness to the mind so that you can actually consciously bring in some of those good emotions. And when you do that enough, when you discipline the mind, it will become second nature. Then it won't be a practice to wake up and start thinking feel good thoughts. It will actually come naturally to you, and it'll become very easy.
Yeah, and I mean, that's kind of why for me, like what I had to do in my life, because I was a very negative person, I was depressed. When I was younger, is I needed to have a ritual that I did every single morning to put myself in that state that you're describing. I needed to do certain things because otherwise my default emotional home would be depressed, negative, pessimistic, insecure. And so I needed to have a ritual where I'd force myself and have a piece of paper in front of me, having questions that I'd ask myself about what am I grateful for? What am I happy about? What am I excited about? What am I proud of in my life? What am I looking forward to? All these questions that would direct my mind to focus on those positive thoughts. And I think when you get into a great state, you get momentum, more positive things flow into your life and into your mind. Just like how you said, when you're in that negative state, you start thinking about all these other problems you have in your life, all the things that annoy you, and you just go down this downward spiral. And so you really have to create that momentum every single morning, every single day, and then throughout the day. And there's many different things you can do. Like, for us, it's not just that, but it's going out for a walk on the beach, getting sunlight, spending time with our son. It's going to the gym. It's, doing all these little things that put you in that great state.
Absolutely. But I think what's key is that you don't have to do things. It's really what you're thinking. That's the start of it. Now, doing things is going to help you, of course, if it makes, every day, this morning, I took a walk on the beach and I was just feeling so good. And I was just expressing my gratitude. I had Lucas here like a bunny on my chest and just felt so good. And it's from that place that you manifest what you want in your life. But I do want to touch on that, for you, it's important that you have a morning ritual. For you, it's important that you do these things to get you into a great state. For me, I do think there's a lot of value in that, but I don't need to do that in the way that you do. And I think that every person is different. Some people have less, your hormones really rule your life. And some people have less serotonin in their brains. Some people have, their dopamine is tapped out. And, maybe they have to do certain things to get themselves into that state more than others. And so I think it's important to try it out, do the morning ritual, do these things, see if they really help you. If you can't just wake up and feel great when you wake up, then you probably need to have some rituals in your life to help propel you into that.
One of the things that I always share as the first thing to do when you wake up is to smile. Just that simple, start off your day with a smile, because that in a way is one of the simplest things, just using your physiology and just saying thank you. Thank you for another day. Thank you for my life. Thank you. I'm still here. And that's, can be challenging to do at times when you're really tired and exhausting. But that's kind of unfortunately how many people wake up. The alarm goes off and they don't want to get up and they want to sleep in more and hit the snooze. And that's that. I think how you start the day is how you end the day, and that first thing can give you an opportunity to set your day up for a win and a success. And it doesn't have to be an elaborate routine or ritual or whatever it is, but maybe just starting right there.
Yeah. And again, like, you might say, well, I've got young kids. I have to wake up and get them ready. And it's all these chores that got to get done. It's like, okay, you can still do all those things, but be in a great state of mind. I woke up at 5 a.m. today, take care of my son, like I'm choosing to feel good. It's a choice, and it's the disciplining of the mind. And, I had a friend over the other day for coffee, and we were talking about this. We were talking about being in a state of gratitude and the power of gratitude, because gratitude forces you, well, you voluntarily are in a state of gratitude, but when you're thinking of things that you're grateful for, you're in that high state. You're not thinking of all the things that are negative. When she was saying, but it's so hard when you're in that low state. It's so hard to think of things that you're grateful for because you don't want to, right? But that's where the disciplining of the mind comes in. You have to discipline your mind. When I'm in that low state, is there something that I can be grateful for? And the answer is always yes. Is it for the eyes that you have that you can watch this, or the ears that you have that you can listen to this right now, or the toes and the feet and the arms? There's always something that you can be grateful for. And yes, if you live in the world where you're always comparing yourself to someone else, you're choosing to focus then on your lack, and the damage of that. Maybe it's the reality, you compared to this person, maybe they do have more than you, and maybe your situation is very unfavorable. But when you are playing the game of comparison and you live in that state of lack, then what you are focusing on is what you don't have. And because your energy is placed on focusing on what you don't have, you're going to only have more of that. The world is all energy, and your thoughts have energy behind them. And when the majority of your thoughts are focused on lack, then there's no room in there for abundance. Mm-hmm. And you're going to continue perpetuating the same life that you have now. You're never going to have a different future. So the key is to bring awareness to those thoughts.
Yeah. One thing that I think about, though, one of my favorite books by David Hawkins is Transcending the Levels of Consciousness, where he describes these different levels of the map of consciousness, different levels of consciousness. And the lowest levels are those of apathy, guilt, shame. These are really low levels of each level of consciousness. There are certain feelings and emotions and like a worldview and a reality that you live in. And one thing that he describes is that when you're at those low levels, it's very difficult for you to get yourself out of those levels on your own. That oftentimes you do need a higher power that can allow you to move out of that to these higher levels. And then when you are in these higher levels of consciousness, it is much easier to use your will, and you have energy to kind of move up to higher levels of consciousness. And it kind of also brings me to like the 12-step programs and things like that. Like oftentimes when people are at rock bottom in an addiction and, they just can't get themselves out of it on their own. And I think part of the challenge is where they think pridefully and egotistically that they can solve this on their own. Instead, it's when they surrender to that higher power, and that higher power could be God, the universe, it could be a group, it could be a person. Something outside of yourself. When you accept and surrender to, through prayer or again, like a sponsor or a coach or an event or whatever it is, whatever that higher power is, that's what can really help you pull yourself out of those low levels. Mm-hmm. And I think that's also a really powerful distinction if you are in those really, really low places. And I know for me at times, certain things that have helped me have been, sometimes it is like, watching videos on YouTube that spark something and brings me out of that really low state to something like, if you're consuming a more conscious piece of content from someone on the internet and it kind of brings you out of that. Yes. And then when you can kind of be in that higher place. Or for me, it's been going to like an event, going to a seminar, going to like an immersive experience where you're just, bombarded and flooded with so much positivity that it brings you to a higher place, or it is through God, through prayer and just saying, God, I need you in my life, come into my life. I give this to you. I surrender this to you. And then that power, that spiritual power can pull you out of that and get you into a better place. Mm-hmm. So I often think that is a very useful distinction that I also realized as well. because like what you described is like kind of like, you have that opportunity each day to like, what direction are you going to go? But if day after day, moment after moment, year after year, you've been choosing the direction of negative thought, negative thought, negative thought.
It's a thought pattern.
The spiral, like,
yes.
like then
it's very difficult.
Now
yes.
it's like very difficult to now make that different choice all of a sudden to the positive ones. And that's why I think sometimes that outside power and that force can pull you at least to the point where you can then make progress in that direction too.
Yeah, I 100% agree that if you're in that dark place, it's very hard to see the light. And to just, someone listening is there and they're just hearing like, well, think good feeling thoughts. They're like, bullshit. They don't like to hear that because they're in a place of suffering. And so the key, what you're describing when you listen to someone like David Hawkins and just listening to him pulls you up, it's because it's energy. You're feeling that energy, that higher conscious state. So if you're at, let's just say for sake of simplicity, that you're consciousness level 1 because you're in this really dark place and someone is one step ahead of you, even though they're just one step ahead of you and the level of consciousness rises indefinitely, that's going to pull you up. And then one step ahead, and that's going to pull you up. And that's how you can start to get yourself out of there. And it goes back to what I said at the very beginning, that, when you're feeling good, when you're in that place of feel good, more people are going to be attracted to you. And it's because of that conscious being, that when you feel good, you're really just in a high conscious state. You're in alignment with your source. You're in alignment with who you are. When you're not feeling good, there's a misalignment with who you are and who you think you are. And so that's why you're not feeling good. You don't feel like yourself. There's something that's off. And so, it goes back to that the state. But yes, I agree that those are some helpful ways too.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more we could get into with that, but I think that's really useful for people. And that's really powerful. And it's kind of like the law of attraction, what you're describing. And when you have those positive emotions and you also use the power of your mind to visualize what you want and you're focused on that combination, you marry those two together, and you can attract anything you want in your life. Things will start showing up for you, and you might not know how things can turn about. But I think, when I look at our lives and what we've created in our life, we essentially did that, whether we're conscious of it or not. It started with having that vision, constantly focused on what we want, visualizing it, seeing it in our mind again and again, but also marrying that with that positive emotion. Every morning, with
the belief that what we want is attainable. That's a key factor.
It's going to happen.
If you don't believe that what you want is within your grasp, is within your reality, then you won't take any of the necessary steps to achieving it. So having full belief, like you always knew, right? You said earlier, I always knew that I was going to become financially free. And you had a strong belief in yourself. You didn't know how you were going to do it. You didn't focus on the how. You knew that would come with time. You just knew that there's something within you. There's a fire within you that is going to create success in your life. And so having that unwavering belief in yourself is important. And, sometimes people's beliefs in themselves are so shattered. They really have no belief in themselves and their capabilities. And so my advice to those people is you got to start building upon that belief. And the way I like to do that is by setting small, simple goals for myself. Today, I'm going to clean the kitchen. Today, I'm going to spend time with my son. Today, I'm going to mow the lawn. And if I set that goal for myself, it's a simple goal, it's attainable. I can do that today. If I set that goal for myself, the key is to do it. The key is to follow through and do it. And then when I'm laying my head down at night, about to fall asleep, I'm going to feel like I set a goal for myself and I achieved it. That's a check. And when I do that every day for a period of time, I'm now building my success track record. So then one day when I sit down and I have a bigger goal, such as I want to build an online business. Well, now I have this success track record that tells me, oh yeah, well, that time that you said you were going to mow the lawn and that time that you said you were going to clean the kitchen or go to the gym or run that marathon and you did it, well, you can do this too. I believe in you. You follow through with what you say. You honor your word. And so that's how you build that self-confidence over time. It has nothing to do with how you look or, how people think of you. That's all just, the superficial confidence. That really the true, unwavering, unshakable confidence within you is how you feel about yourself.
One thing that I think really benefited me when I think back where that belief came from, because I had no reason to believe I'd be successful. I didn't have the best upbringing, parents that instilled a lot of confidence or belief in me or anything like that. But, for me, it was the mentors that I had. It was like the virtual mentors from books and the Tony Robbins and people that I'd listened to, because the confidence came because I was just being told every single day by these forces that I was listening to that you could be successful. Here's how you become successful. Here's the mindset. Here's the beliefs. That was being fed into my mind every single day. Mm-hmm. And when that is being fed into my mind every day, I basically thought, especially at a young age, of course I'll be successful. I'm being given the secrets of success right now at a young age when I was 17 years old, listening to audiobooks, listening to audio programs and watching videos and all of that. It was just feeding into my mind constantly. And so I thought, I'm 17, 18, 19, 20. Of course I could become successful by the time I'm 30. If I just apply the things that I'm learning, mm-hmm. or by the time I'm 40. And that just gave me a lot of confidence. And I never doubted it. Mm-hmm. I was never skeptical of any of that. And it was a big part of that was just ignorance and being so naive. I just didn't know the world. I didn't know failure. When I hear the stories of Thomas Edison failing 1,000 times, or Colonel Sanders, failing, going to thousands of doors trying to sell his chicken recipe to create Kentucky Fried Chicken. When I'd hear those stories, they were so inspirational to me that I just thought, okay, well, I didn't fear failure. Yeah. I didn't fear, I viewed failure as a good thing, as part of because I was just learning it and listening to the stuff, and I just believed everything. And I trusted these sources and these people that, and what they were saying. And so, I found that to be just really incredibly valuable to have that, especially at a young age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, every successful person will tell you that they failed 1,000 times. Yeah. And when you really understand that, wow, they're very successful and they're telling me that they've had failure after failure before achieving that mm-hmm. success, you really realize that failure is just a stepping stone to success. Mm-hmm. It's not preventing you from success. It's helping you acquire knowledge, experience, understandings that propel you towards that success. Yeah. And I would say here's why you, the listener, can become successful. A very simple, basic reason why you can also be successful. And it's because you're also a human being, where I'm a human being, you're a human being, all these success stories, these are all human beings. And we are all 99.9% identical biologically. We're all the same, and if there's people in this world, I guarantee that you can find someone in a very similar situation than you. Yes, your situation may not be ideal. Maybe you don't come from the best neighborhood. Maybe you don't have great financial money right now. But I'm sure that you could find someone who's in a similar situation than you who is a success story. For example, if you look at Oprah's story, how did someone like her, she has all these things going against her, she became an incredible success and is an incredible inspiration, not because she's just successful, but because of her story. It's because she persevered past all of these challenges, all of these reasons why so many people would say, oh, not me. Oh, I couldn't become a success. She was able to push through all of those and actually use them as fuel to motivate her towards her success. Or someone like LeBron James. Or, there's just so many examples of incredible people who are successful, who came from very difficult circumstances. And I think that's a good enough reason to believe that you also can be a success.
I actually think that it's easier to create success. That the worse your circumstances and the position that you're in many ways, it's a lot easier. Even though, let's say, you would think that someone that just grew up with all this money and all these resources, that person would have a higher chance of success because of where they're starting from compared to someone that has nothing and they're just down and out. I think one of the things that often is overlooked is that somebody that, let's say, grew up comfortable, easy life, everything given to them, they have all the money, they have all of that, to then create something with that is a lot more challenging because they don't have the why. They don't have the motivation. They don't have the drive. They don't have that hunger. And that's what most of success is created from, is that you have to have this drive and this hunger, this purpose for working your ass off. And when things are easy and comfortable and you have everything that you want, then it's hard to get yourself motivated. Yeah. I can attest to this now, of being in a position where I have everything that I want. I don't have the same motivation that I had when I had nothing.
Yeah.
You know, when my back was against the wall and I was desperate, I had no choice because it was my only way of getting out of pain. And that pain became my fuel. It becomes the drive. It becomes the motivator for you. And success is not created from resources. It's created from resourcefulness. If you're resourceful enough, you find the resources, you make it happen, you do whatever it takes. And so if you look at some of the most successful people, the rags to riches, those are people that hit rock bottom. You know, those are people that were in the lowest points, and that drive and their circumstances is what created the drive to pull themselves out of that and to transform their life. So for me, like, I like being in that position, you know, because that drive, the anger, the frustration of just not being where I wanted to be, that was tremendous in terms of creating the life that I was able to create. And I think that most success, whether you see it from these billionaires that are in the world or whatnot, I think a lot of that success is created from insecurity, scarcity, fear, trauma that they've had growing up as kids with their parents, you know, wanting to prove themselves because they didn't get enough validation from their parents. I think a lot of success is created from people that psychologically, you know, are not in the best place in many cases, because in many ways, like, if you grew up secure, you know, and without the insecurities and whatnot, do you really have the drive to create success when you're like, oh, you know, I don't need to prove myself, I don't need to validate myself, I don't need to make all this money to be worthy and have the world validate me. In ways like, yes, you can create success, but it's from a much different place. It's from a different position of creating it from. And I think that, and it's maybe from your passion or what's going to contribute the most or whatever, but I think pain is a much more powerful motivator than pleasure. And often that pain can drive people to do things that more often than not, if you're just secure, complacent, satisfied, happy in your life, maybe you're not going to have that same level of drive. Not that, again, you can't create success. I think the reason and the drive behind it is a little bit different. Okay,
so I agree with you and disagree with you on that. So I agree in the fact that there's a fire within you when you are at the bottom, that phoenix that rises from the ashes, that is a fire that you can't buy. That's a fire that just someone who grows up with a silver spoon in their mouth, they're not going to have. And that oftentimes, most of the success stories that we learn about, that's the case. We hear these stories because they're so inspirational, and they're inspirational because of what they've been through to get to where they are. But I think just because the majority of the stories that we hear about happen because of these, maybe tragic circumstances, maybe the kids, growing up in difficult situations, maybe, there's more, they develop insecure relationships, whatever it is. I don't think that makes them more successful. I actually think that's this goes back to a previous episode we talked about of raising a secure child. Like, my goal as a parent for Lucas, my first and ultimate goal is to raise a secure child in a sense where he's growing up and I'm not inflicting these traumas on him. And I'm doing my best not to shelter him, of course. I'm trying to push him to explore and to discover the world. But I'm not going to get in the way. I'm going to allow him, I want him to have a secure foundation built with me, his attachment relationship with me, because human beings, we are social creatures. There's no way of refuting that. We are social creatures. Without the attachment to a caregiver, we would not survive. And so this relationship that we have together is pivotal. And so my goal is to build a solid foundation for that relationship so that he can now discover the world from a place of openness, not from a place of fear, not from a place of, oh, I'm going to discover the world and create success because I want to prove to my parents that I can. It's from a place of, wow, what a beautiful playground I live in.
Yeah.
The world is my oyster. Let me discover, let me pursue things that I'm passionate about. Let me discover what I'm good at. And I think that from that place, you can create real success, not just the financial success, but the real success where you're financially free, but you also feel amazing because you did it from that place of inspiration. And I think because so few people are secure in terms of their attachment style, most people, we're all fucked up. Most of us, we are, because, partly because of how we're raised, and we can't blame our parents because you can only do so much with what you know, and that's fine. And I think, yes, it fuels us to create success, but I think it's very different when you come from that place of where you truly are. Now, it's different than what you were mentioning before, where you're growing up and your success is handed down to you. That's different, because there's a lot of kids who grow up in very rich families, and the family business is passed down to them, but they've got their own traumas with their parents. Their parents weren't available for them because they were so focused on building that family legacy. So these are all different circumstances.
I think like what I'm trying to get to is, I think that when you have within yourself, I'm not good enough, I'm not enough, that's a very powerful drive and motivator that manifests itself in people believing, especially in our society that conditions, programs us, that the way to become enough is through materialism, money, social media, followers, etc. And that if you grow up without that, I am enough.
Yes.
Then you're not like, how many people on social media, really are just, doing things, saying things, trying to be a certain way because of I'm not good enough. That deep insecurity that they have within themselves. It's like most human beings, because most people were not secure kids growing up. They didn't, we all have obviously different degrees of insecurities. And it's not that a kid who is grown up secure and everything doesn't have any insecurities. But I think that's such a powerful force that drives people. And I think if you were secure and happy and just, grew up in a really good upbringing and whatnot, your definition of success is going to be different. It's
a holistic definition of success.
You're not going to feel
it's
like
our definition of success.
You're not going to feel like I need to make all this money. I need to have all these followers. I need to be really
good.
How all the designer clothes and cars and all of that. Because often I think that's overcompensation for insecurities that you see in the world, rather than hey, you know what? This is my passion. This is actually what I want to do. These are my gifts. I want to be a musician. I want to be an artist. And maybe that doesn't create financial wealth, but oftentimes I think there are people that have created success financially or through their quality of life and happiness and whatnot. But it's just, regardless of what the world thinks, they're doing it because that's what their passion and what their gift and what they want to create and share with the world,
for
regardless
that reason,
of what people think.
And for that reason, they wake up every day joyous.
Yes.
And that is success.
And they don't care whether or not other people view them and perceive them as, oh, you're a success or you're a failure because of what you're doing for a career. They're a secure, confident person doesn't really care for that because they're happy doing what they're doing, living their life how they want to live it.
Because their confidence is stemming from within, not from the exterior, from the outside world.
Yeah.
Well, let's give an example. Lucas, okay? Mm-hmm. Lucas is really thriving as a baby. He's almost 1 year old now. And he's far beyond all of these, milestones, and that's great. And that's all on him. But now he's thriving because when babies come into this world, they are that open book. They're here to discover, to learn. There's a sparkle in their eye because they are so eager to have this adventure of life. And so they come here very capable of learning. The brain of a baby is incredible, how quickly they grow, how much they learn. If you expose a baby to any language during the infancy stage, during the I don't know, first year or so of their life. They can learn multiple languages simultaneously. Can any one of us do that? That's incredible what they're capable of doing. So their capabilities are virtually unmatched. And what happens is when they come into this world, they are this open book that has a lot of potential. And Lucas is continuing to thrive because has a perfect environment for him so that he can thrive. His needs are being met, his emotional needs are being met, and so he is now confident to conquer the world. Now, if we look at another child who's in a different circumstance, say their parents are not available or their primary caregivers, whoever that may be, are emotionally unavailable. They are feeling this sense of, they're not feeling attached to anyone. So there's a sense of insecurity within them. When they feel this sense of insecurity, they're no longer able to move forward into the world with confidence. Now they're focused on how can I become more secure? They're focused on how can I ensure that their relationship with my caregiver is secure? So they're preoccupied and they can't thrive in the same ways that they should. They don't developmentally hit their milestones on time. They aren't able to maybe laugh as much and smile as much. So they're more preoccupied, more nervous, more anxious. That's not the natural state of the baby. So when they are secure, they are now in a place where they can really thrive. And that's why I believe that a child who grows up secure into an adult who's secure, they're going to be creating success much more easily than someone who isn't. Even though they don't have that fire, I think that they will create true success in their lives from that place.
Yeah, I think they're not in that survival mode that many people will be in. And that's kind of when you're at a higher level of consciousness. Yeah, you're not as preoccupied with survival and you don't have those fears of how can I survive, that primitive aspect of ourselves that can drive us through fear to feel like, we need to be secure. We need to, have enough or whatever. And if you already, are at a higher level of consciousness, then you can create without that fear. You can create, you can do, you can experience without that. Yeah. So one question I want to ask you is building an online business. Obviously you're in a very different position now. The path that you took, the path that I took building a business, we did it before having kids.
Yeah.
And that was great. I think that's probably the most ideal way that someone can create their life, is that before they have kids, if you can create financial security, financial freedom, if you and your partner can have years building a great foundation, doing the self-development, working on yourselves, create that foundation, then to bring a child into this world, it will just make the experience so much easier, so much better. And not just for us, the experience, but also for your kids as well, because you can be available for them, you can be present. So many parents, they're not that available for their kids because they're off working and trying to pay the bills and whatnot. So the question I have for you is that if you were in a position, let's say, where you had Lucas, you had a child, but you didn't yet have the success, you discovered online business, you had that drive, that hunger for it, how do you think you would have gone about it? How do you think you would have pursued success? Would you have been able to? Would it have been a lot harder for you? Do you think you still would have become successful? What do you think that would have been like? Because when you don't have kids, it's like, man, that's just so much easier. You have the freedom, you have the time, you have the energy, all of that, versus when you add a kid, especially a baby, into your life. Now that, especially for women, will preoccupy you so much. And I know there's many women out there that have kids. They have, maybe they want to have kids, but they also want to create success.
Yeah, it's a great question. And before I answer that, I will say that, I think it is important to plan your future to the best that you can. Not everything is going to go according to plan, but they say fail to plan, plan to fail. And so I think that is important. And in that plan, in my opinion, it's making sure that you delay having kids until you're at a place in your life where you've really uncovered your shadows. I'm putting the financials aside right now. I'm just talking about your own personal development, because having kids is a huge responsibility, because you are now raising the next generation of people, of adults who are going to enter society and who are either going to be contributing members of society or sociopaths, quite honestly. And a lot depends on how you raise those children. And now how you raise those children will depend on how you were raised and any shadows from your past that are unresolved. So what I would do is I would take the time that is needed to do the self-development, do the reflection, to bring awareness to who I am, to really get to know oneself before embarking on the journey of having children. Because if you don't heal any wounds, if you don't bring to your conscious mind any shadows and resolve those shadows, then you will unconsciously bring those forth into your children. You know, you will. That's just what happens generation after generation. So I think that's key. Now, if I was in my 20s and I had a child and I had not yet created the success, first of all, I would recognize that yes, it is going to be harder for me than it is for someone who doesn't have kids. And I think that is important to be, yes, it's realistic. It's probably there's more challenges that I'm going to have to face that a woman of my age who doesn't have kids just doesn't have to face because they don't have that responsibility, especially with small children. When you have babies and toddlers, they really need you. They really need your time. They're very demanding with your time. So there's just going to be a whole set of challenges in front of you that the other person just won't be facing. And so I think acknowledging that and saying like, yeah, that's my reality. But am I going to let this cripple me? Am I going to let this prevent me from ever getting started? Am I going to let this get in the way of giving myself a chance at success? Or am I going to use this as my reason for success? I could have the story of why, this is why I couldn't do it, or this is why I did do it. And I think using, children, there's no better fire to light under your ass than having your own kids. Because especially like as a mom, there's this mama lion fire within you. Like when I became a mother, there's a part of me that was never lit before. Like I was always very calm and relaxed and very easygoing, and you had a good time with me, right? I was a nice chill wife. And after having Lucas, there's this fire within me that like, I'm a mama bear. If anything happens to him, I will rip your throat out. Like I am fierce now because he's my love, because he's my blood, but also because he's dependent on me. And I know that he's my responsibility and I want to do the best I can to take care of him. So he is a great motivator to creating success. Yes. And so I would use that motivation, like we talked about, to light that fire. But I would also recognize that yes, there's going to be more challenges that I'm going to be faced with, and I'm going to have to work around them rather than using them to create my story of why I can't be successful. And that's what a lot of people do. They get caught up in their story of why they can't be successful instead of creating a story of why they will be successful. So what I would do is I would first figure out, okay, first of all, I think the first year of life with a child, it's just very consuming. The first 6 months, forget about starting a business. This is your time with baby. Focus on baby. Take care of baby. Very important for the attachment of the child. Just forget about it. But at the point where
don't put the pressure on yourself at that stage. I got to build a business. Business, because you're going to set yourself up for failure. Like you have to recognize your body just went through so much. Hormonally, it's going to take you time to get back. There can be postpartum challenges, and you want to, I think allowing your body to get back, because it's already very stressed, you're sleep deprived, all of that, but you have to, the more stresses that you add on yourself, the harder it will be for your body to recover and rebound. So you kind of have to look at it long-term, this pursuit of building a business, and not be so short-sighted that, man, I got to create my success and build my business right after the baby's born. Yeah,
I agree. And so, take that time to just be with baby. And if you need to make money because you don't have maternity leave, just go and get a job. Don't focus too much on building a business. I think, do what you can to spend time with baby. And,
and yourself
and when
too.
You're with baby, this is a good time to be listening to things. Oftentimes, like I had to do a lot of contact naps, like the amount of hours that I spent on the rocking chair, my ass was numb. And you can listen to things at that time. And that's where you gather information, you get inspired, you learn about things, because you have to understand that when you decide to build a business today, it's not like you can get started tomorrow. You decide to build a business and you have to now collect, okay, what business am I going to build? What direction am I going to go in? There's so many different ways I can build a business. There's so many different models. What do I want to do? What am I good at? What resources do I need? Who am I going to follow? What course am I going to buy? There's a lot of information that you kind of need to collect. So you can do that, the research phase if you'd like during that time, but not take any action. You're just storing your notes in your hard drive in your mind. And then when you get to a point where you feel good, where you're emotionally, mentally, physically, you're in that place, then it's like, okay, now it's time to figure out how I can take some time out of the day to be working towards building my business. And so you need to figure out childcare. And I think one of the important things with childcare for me, I think, is if you can have someone that's going to be a constant in the child's life to be there for them. So if it's dad, if it's maybe auntie, or if it's grandma, grandpa, a family member is going to be preferential over a stranger, because that family is going to be in their life for the rest of their life. And so making arrangements to be closer to family during those times, so that you can hand off the child, so that you can take an hour or two a day to work towards your business. And that might mean moving to a different state if you have to, because you don't realize how much you need your mama until you have a baby.
I think you have to look at building a business as it's going to consume your life, almost like having another child. Like when you start a business, you're having another baby, and that baby, just like your actual baby, is going to consume the most amount of your time, energy, resources during that initial phase. But eventually the baby becomes more independent. It can walk, it can connect with other people. It doesn't need you as much as it initially does. So your business, when you do make that step and that leap in that direction, be prepared that it is going to consume you. Even if you might think, okay, I'm going to spend an hour or two a day on my business. Well, there's something called momentum. Like you're going to get into the momentum. You're going to get consumed by it. Like when we were building our businesses, it just consumed us, because now you're getting emails, now you're getting orders. Now you've got to it's very difficult just to say
Shut
like
off.
1 hour or 2 hours, because that becomes much more, as we all know.
Yes.
So you have to be prepared for that transition to then consume you and require a lot of your energy and your resources. So that's why I think if you can look at it as you're going to have to go through a stretch that might be 3 to 5 years, maybe less, maybe more, I don't know. But you have to factor in that this is going to be a journey that is going to consume you. It is going to take time for your business to get off the ground, for you to go through the learning curve, to get it to a point where that it doesn't require your time as much. That's something I think you have to understand. And so I think preparing for that, if you want to start a business, you don't have to start today. Maybe it's not the most ideal time today, but you can still prepare your mindset. You can prepare okay, when my child turns 1 year old, and I could then set myself up so that that's when I could really dive into it, and I can go for that sprint and really, dedicate the time. I can set everything up in the meantime. I can work on my mindset. I can learn about business. I can learn marketing. I can listen to podcasts. I can, there's a lot of things that you can do to prepare yourself for when that time comes. That's the way that I would approach it. And as you said too, maybe it's okay, you know what? If it is going to be a stretch for a couple of years, okay, maybe my family is going to be an incredible resource that can assist me in this. And so therefore, I'm going to move close to family. I'm going to make a sacrifice over the next couple of years. I'm going to move off in the suburbs to a different state, to a different country, just so that I can have my parents nearby and they can support me with the childcare. Maybe with my husband or, with my partner, we have to work things out in a way where they're going to be more the provider for our essentials, our survivor, being surviving and whatnot, so that I can, dedicate my time to this. Or you have to be strategic, I think, and plan that. And I think if you do that in advance, it will set yourself up more for success rather than trying to overwhelm yourself and just be stressed and trying to do everything at the same time when it's not the most ideal stage to really go full force on it.
Right. So, I mean, it is the reality is that as your business becomes more successful, it will require more of your time investment. So don't think it's the opposite. You know, the beginning stages, you're going to invest the least amount of time when you don't have customers, you don't have employees. And as things grow, exactly, as things grow, the demands increase. And when the demands increase, your attention's being pulled in all these different directions. And that's why as an entrepreneur, you don't have a schedule, you know, the way an employee does, where they're working 8 to 5 and they go home and they can cook dinner and have peace of mind. As an entrepreneur, at 5 o'clock, you're cooking dinner and you're thinking about the emails that you need to write and the promotions that you need to do the next day and all of these things. Your mind never turns off. So be prepared for that. That's important. And then I think also in terms of building the business as a mom, it's thinking of, I just lost my train of thought.
Well, one thing I actually find interesting about moms, you know, there's like that saying that if you want to get something done, give it to someone who's busy.
Busy mom.
And in many cases, because as parents and especially mom, like you're so busy, like you eventually like adapt to like not getting much sleep. But in some ways I can actually see, like, you know, one thing I've often heard too about the best CEOs are often women, you know, because they've had kids and whatnot. And like, they're just kind of able to multitask so much. And there's like these abilities that I think women have and they develop that can actually be very advantageous to, you know, building a business and whatnot too.
Women have a fantastic ability to multitask, unlike men. Men just cannot do it, not in the same way that women can. And so that it really works to your advantage when you're building a business and there's just so many different things going on, but you're able to prioritize which goes first, and you're able to do multiple things at once. And also, I think what's important is to decide what you're going to give up. So if you're going to be building a business, like Stefan said, it is very consuming. You know, it's your child is a priority and then your business. And there's not really any room for anything else if you really want to go all in to make it a success initially, you know, and that's what it is. Like, to really make something a success, you really do have to go all in with it, because otherwise you're just going to, you know, it's just never really going to take off. And so you have to decide, what am I going to give up in my life? And it's temporary, right? So maybe I'm going to give up, you know, some of my social life, my outing every Friday. I hang out with my girlfriends. Maybe I'm going to give that up for a while. Or maybe you have to decide based on your value system, right? If your child is your top value, and then I don't know what else, what are some things lower on your value system that is taking your time every day that you can now give up to use that time towards building your business? Because we all have 24 hours in a day. So you have to figure out, how can I best leverage those 24 hours?
Well, that's very difficult, because I think, especially after having a baby already, for example, your relationship is taking a step back, or maybe your health, you know, like, is taking a step back. So there's all those other areas in some cases that have been neglected that you also now need to recognize. Okay, yes, there's baby and there's business, but then there's also the relationship. There's like,
but that goes back to what we're saying. Mom and dad have to be on the same page, right? You have to sit down with your partner. You have to get clear on what it is that you both want for your family, and how are you going to support each other to achieve that goal.
And I think, that's a really important thing. You know, we see this with people that have reached out to us about, you know, one person wants to build a business, but their partner is not supportive of that, you know, and they think like, what are you doing wasting your time trying to build an online business? And so there could be conflict in a marriage and relationship with that, especially when building a business can take you away from that relationship. You know, your partner is working late hours at night instead of spending time with you, and that can be very frustrating. And I think like, if you are going to start a business and you are in a relationship and you have a family, you really have to enroll them in the vision of this and share that same vision, and be both willing to endure those sacrifices that you are going to have to make. And I think creating a level of a schedule, I think, is important. Like, you still have to have the time with you and your partner. I think, like, you know, going back to what you're saying though about maybe that first year is not the most ideal time to do it. But once you can prepare, okay, you know, now we at least have the help, the childcare, we've set that up. So that way, I can have a stretch of hours during the day to focus on business. And then I can, have that time, when the baby goes to bed at nighttime, then, I can maybe do a little bit more work on my business or have some time with my partner. Like, you have to schedule those things in, because if you don't schedule it, it's probably not going to happen. It's not going to come together. So it is, I think, going back to what you said, it's going to be really hard. It's going to be very challenging. And like the areas that I would probably first look at, like if I also was in a position where I was a father and hadn't yet created my success, it'd be very challenging, because now I have this other area of my life called my relationship with my child that I also want to invest my time in, nurture, and then the relationship that I have with my partner. But the things that I would first and foremost sacrifice in my life would be all of the things that I spend time doing that just have no nutritive value. Netflix and chill. And in fact, I went through a long enough stage in my life where I had no TV.
Yeah.
Because I remember, Jim Rohn, motivational speaker, he often, would say to people, like, how much did that TV cost you? And the person would be like, oh, it cost me $500. He's like, I disagree. I think that TV cost you $10,000. And the person would be like, what do you mean? Like, I paid $500 for it. It's like, that's what you paid for it. But the cost to your life is over $10,000, because the amount of time that you're spending watching it is an opportunity cost, and that instead you could spend that time making more money or focused on your business or other areas of your life. And so for me, like, I would look at things like that where, hey, if I'm not yet where I want to be and I want to create this freedom, security, and this life that I want, then the areas that I'm going to give up is these the ways that I escape and give myself short-term gratification. I don't yet have the luxury to have a TV and sit there for a couple hours at night binge watching something if I'm not yet where I want to be. And so I would get rid of the TV. And yes, it's not ideal. It's not, I wouldn't want to have to go back to that, but those are the things that I had to do. Those are the things that you had to do, is we had to give up those things, maybe an hour of sleep, 2 hours of sleep. There was a stretch for me where I was like, I can't afford to sleep 8 hours. I'm not where I want to be. I'm going to sleep 6 hours.
Every mom has already given up enough hours of sleep for a lifetime.
Not forever. Obviously, sleeping less is going to have negative health impact on your longevity and whatnot. But the time has to come from somewhere. There's only 24 hours. So where are you going to take it from? And you don't want to take it from your relationship with your kid, your wife, your business, those things that are going to provide the most ROI for your time. So instead, you got to take it from things that aren't really going to move the needle much in your life. And that is maybe, socializing with certain people and doing fun things. Like, you still got to do that, of course. I'm not saying neglecting that completely, but maybe you have a day out of the week. Maybe you have Sunday, day off. You get to indulge, you get to watch a movie with your family, whatever, right? But it has to come from somewhere, and beggars can't be
By the
choosers.
way, a lot of people say that when they became successful, the reason why they love the success is because of who they became.
Yeah.
And why do you think that is? It's because on their journey to success, they had to give up a lot of that non-nutritive stuff. They had to give up the, hours in front of the TV, the hours scrolling social media, the video games, all of that stuff that did not add value to their lives. And then their day has now been composed of all things that do add value, that are productive. And so they like who they became, because now they became this person that's really moving the needle in their life. They've become a person who's very productive with their life, instead of just being, a couch potato all day.
Well, for us, when we were in that mode, the success mode, we were so efficient with our time, because you have to. You only have so much time. There's so much you want to get done. And so every minute of the day, it's like you don't want to waste it. You don't
Didn't even want to go pee. I would hold in. So
if I'm going to go to the gym, man, I'm walking fast to the gym. I'm listening to an audiobook. Like, I'm using net time, no extra time, where I'm simultaneously.
Didn't want to waste any time cooking meals, so be eating protein bars. That's why you take it to an extreme.
Yeah,
when
you take it to that extreme. Yeah, you don't want to spend all this time preparing a meal, whatever. Just throw a protein powder in a smoothie with a banana and make us have a meal that way. So you're ultra efficient and focused on that, because you can just get more out of each day and get a better ROI for the day by doing it that way. But you have to also recognize there will come a time when you have created your success, you have created your freedom, you have created the abundance, now you can take your foot off the gas.
Yes.
Now you can stop and smell the roses. Now, like for me, when I moved into a penthouse, so you didn't know me when I didn't have a TV. You met me when I did. And, when you met me, I was like right at that stage, I bought a TV, big screen. I didn't have a PlayStation for years, and I got a PlayStation again. And, now I can indulge in some video games. And now I can I don't need to like be efficient every single minute of the day, because that was a stage that I went through. And at a certain point, life also is about enjoying it. It's about, breathing, and it's about being present, and it's about, having those pleasures and still balancing it. You can go too far, obviously, and just overindulging in pleasures, not challenging yourself. But you have to recognize and have that belief in the vision that time will come where you can rebalance your life, and you don't have to always live that way. So I think that's an important thing.
Yeah. And I mean, there's another argument for a different approach where you just always living your life in balance, and you're just deciding that I'm not going to have my goal to become financially free or super successful, but instead what I really want to have is a balanced life where every day I feel really good and I feel happy and I don't have any stress in my life, and I am able to give presence to every moment of the day. And for some people, that is the path that they want to take. And there's really no right or wrong. It's just, your life is your life, and you came here to have an adventure of a lifetime, and you have to choose which direction you want to go in. But the key is to be on purpose. And the key is to have a vision for your life, because without a vision, you will perish. Without a vision, you're just going to be pulled in all these different directions. And pretty soon you're going to be 80 years old and on your deathbed and have a lot of regrets because you weren't living life with intention. So the key is to be intentional about how it is that you pursue your life, what you do on the day to day, and not thinking that there is one right way to do things. There's so many right ways to do things.
Well, when I think everyone has a different definition of success, right? And I think that's something that you have to decide for yourself, and you have to reevaluate it, because sometimes, we're in a very different level perhaps than most people, and maybe not everybody cares to go to this extreme. I think, for me, especially when I first started, I was initially my first goal was to make six figures. Actually, it was first to make 60,000 a year, and then it grew to six figures. And that for me is when I started to feel like I'm successful. Wow, six figures, that's a great amount of money. And I think the millions more came through momentum and just success breeds more success. And it's just, you get consumed by it. And then there's such a great opportunity in front of you that it just turns into millions and millions and millions. But the biggest impact in my life was making six figures. And I think for most people, making $100,000 a year would change their life. And maybe everyone has to also get to that point where they decide what's enough. At what point do I rebalance my life? At what point do I, if you're spending so much of your time and energy being consumed by business and financial goals, and it's at the expense of these other areas of my life, well, obviously that's not going to be the most sustainable long term. So at a certain point, you have to decide, when am I going to take my foot off the gas, and then now dedicate some of this energy to rebalancing my life and living it as you described, where you're just intentional every day, you're enjoying every day. And, for us, that's been the transition for us, I'd say, over the last few years. In fact, to the point where, we became semi-retired pretty much, where we got to the point where it's we were so consumed by business and making money. And part of it just kind of pulls and sucks you in like an addiction. And it's fun and it's engaging, and, you're super efficient and all of that, super productive. But we had to have the ability to recognize that, we also want to stop and smell the roses. We want to celebrate our life. We want to live our life in many different ways and not just have our life be that. And that was a really powerful experience. It was at first scary, because your identity and your self-worth can be tied up in what you're doing for a career, and even, tied into how much money you're making. To be making a certain amount of money and then have that money decline, rather for us, every month, the numbers are going up, right? We never had that experience where it start to go down. But to recognize the fear that would come up with that, but practice letting that go and be willing to address that rather than just getting sucked back into it and, be driven to make more and more and more. I think that that's a really powerful, conscious decision to make at some point in your life, and to prioritize other values, to shift your values, like as we both have, for being more oriented on materialism, wealth, followers, all the egotistical aspects of life, to instead valuing happiness, being present. The things that you can't really put a price on, that again, that society, they don't acknowledge you for. You're not going to get a lot of followers on social media.
There's
or
no
a lot
accolades
of
for spending time with your family.
Yeah, like those sort of things, but they're so much more important, so much more meaningful in life, that at some point you have to focus on and prioritize.
Yeah.
So I think like for us, making that transition was powerful. And I remember for me, I had to like deprogram myself.
Yeah, it took a while.
Yeah, like I was so used to just being a human doing rather than a human being.
Yeah.
And I just had to practice just letting that go. And it's very easy at times, like when you feel bored, it's like, oh, I can just like get back into business, meets all my needs, I feel significant, all of that. Instead of challenging ourselves, like, because at some point we didn't really have many hobbies in our life. Like we were digital nomads traveling the world.
It was one of the things that we decided to give up was the hobbies and pursuing different interests, because we wanted to use all that time towards business. For us, our top priority was our health, relationships, and business.
Yeah,
and everything else was, basically sacrificed for a period of time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, for example, we were digital nomads. Like our hobby and passion was traveling and building our business and self-development and health and fitness. And so we would spend all of our time doing that. But because we were never in one location for a long enough period of time, we never had an opportunity to like every week, like go to yoga class or, go to like a social function and build something, get into playing the piano. And so when we did like kind of retire, I guess, and no longer really spend any time in business, I remember like we're just living our life in a very different way. We started doing art. Got into painting. I had no idea that you're such a great artist.
Oh, thanks.
Like she's incredible, the artwork that you do. And you were able to express that side of yourself that you kind of neglected. You kind of were able to experience your creative side through your business, but to be able to just like, it feels so inefficient to do it, as the mindset we had before. It's like, I'm going to sit there for a couple hours and just do, paint something. Rather, I could put that into my business. I could do something to make me more money.
Yeah, I would say that was my favorite part of having my business was the product development, was bringing out that artistic side through product development. And I felt like it was very rewarding because I would actually, financially benefit from it. Yeah. But to express that artistic side on paper, painting something and drawing something, to me was a waste of time, because there's no financial gain from it. And so I think what I had to do was a huge mindset shift to go from, every day my programming was to open my computer and to be super productive. And I had to like slowly do fewer hours every single day. It's like, okay, now we're going to end work at 5 p.m. Okay. And then it was like, okay, now we're going to end work at 3 p.m. Okay, now we're going to start our day at 10 a.m. instead of 8 a.m. Like slowly transition to doing less work. And I would feel very unproductive in those initial stages. It was a very uncomfortable feeling, because what was comfortable was being productive. What felt right was moving the needle in my business. And it was very strange. It was very difficult because I didn't know what to do with myself, because I was so used to doing this one thing. I was so conditioned to doing this one thing that to not do it just felt wrong. And so it took me time to figure out what I can use this time, this newfound time. What can I do with this time? Because everything just felt so unproductive to me. Oh, drawing, playing piano, going on a walk, whatever it was, it just felt like very unproductive. And so I had to have a mindset shift where I saw like, no, that is productive. That is, how about, I use this to grow in a different way of my life, in a different area of my life, bringing presence to my day, slowing down, not checking the clock all the time. There's a lot of value in that. And so starting to recognize the value in that.
And making less money and getting less results and being okay with it.
Yeah. And at first that was difficult, because I remember one time you asked me, how much would you feel comfortable with bare minimum making every month? Do you remember that? Yeah. And what did I say?
$100,000.
Yeah. I was like, I would not feel comfortable making less than $100,000 a month. Yeah. And like, I meant it, because I was making so much more. And then, to
go from where you were to like anything less than $100,000 a month
felt unacceptable.
Yeah.
And it sounds crazy to someone listening now, and it sounds crazy to myself now, but in the position that I was, where every month my income was growing, like it was like, you know, every month you're like doubling or tripling because your business is just growing so exponentially. It's insane. Like the growth that you can have through your own business, it's just completely different than the growth that you experience being employed at a job. It's hard to wrap your mind around. But anyways, to kind of give that up, I didn't give it up, but to like slow down and to accept the financial loss, I guess, of that, so that I can pursue other things in my life. And so I think that was a very conscious decision of us. I think it wasn't easy, but we realized that
the greater good,
there's other areas of life that are more meaningful. And we've now, you know, mastered this one area of life. We're satisfied with that. We've, you know, like what more is there? You know, there's always going to be another level, but we recognize that it's a hamster wheel that you're never going to jump off if you don't become aware.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes I feel like people maybe don't understand that, because sometimes people like, hey, why aren't you selling on Amazon? Or, you know, why aren't you still like, because there's so many opportunities, like, and there's opportunities that we share in wholesaling. There's so many ways you can do it, but people don't quite understand, because they're, I think, in that mode that we were into, where you're overly consumed by those opportunities, and you feel like if you don't take the opportunity, then you're leaving money on the table and you're missing out. And
and I felt that for a while.
By that, and so they don't maybe realize that we're just in a very different position. But I think what everyone has to understand is what got you to where you are is not necessarily going to get you to where you want to go. And for us, because we have a greater vision for our life, we knew really where we wanted to be, and that creating the success and financial abundance was just a stepping stone in the journey towards where you ultimately want to be.
Yeah.
And that is just, you know, the means to that end, rather than, you know, the end to the means. And so I think recognizing really what you really want. Why are you starting a business? Why are you making this money? You know, like, what is all this for? And I think oftentimes people, when they first start a business, I think they can be focused on that, but get lost in that. You know, like at first it's like, well, you know, I want to start a business so that I can have more time with my kids. You know, or I can have more time with my partner. Mm-hmm. Well, the reality is you're not initially, but you get so consumed by it that you lose sight of like why you started it in the first place. Like why you want to create financial freedom so that you can retire young, you know, you can, you know, work the 4-hour work week, and you have all this time to now spend your life doing all these other hobbies and passions and things that you want to do, that you want to spend your time doing. So it's not losing sight of that big picture of why you're doing this in the first place.
But also one reason that people, they get so intertwined in what they're doing. They're just so busy, you know, they're just needed by everyone, all their employees, they're being pulled in so many, they just don't have the time. For their initial intention was to spend more time with their family, and they've lost sight of that because now they're just so in demand, and they don't have the time for that. So it's almost like you have to foresee that, and you have to think of, okay, how can I you know, outsource things, and how can I not be the bottleneck in my business so that I can remove myself from the business so that I can have that freedom that I always wanted.
And I think, like, I will also clarify, not everybody, like, there's obviously certain people that their business for them ultimately is like, that's their passion. And so they don't ever want to retire. They don't ever want to, you know, get to that point that I, you know, might be describing, where they rebalance their life in the ways that we are. I mean, I personally think a balanced life leads to a more fulfilling life. Like, I often see billionaires that neglect their health, their marriage, their kids, all of that, you know, and maybe they just love what they do so much. They're not doing it for the money. They're not doing it for the reasons that we described, but it's just like their passion.
But sometimes the reason that it's what they love is because it's all they know, because they spent so many years before that just doing the same thing.
Walking away from it and moving away from it.
Exactly. And so
it's their identity, it's the significance.
There's a hidden fear underneath
ego
that.
That's, you know, stuck, you know, maybe there's psychological things too, that it is like an addiction in many ways.
I have a friend who, she's like that. She's created a very successful business and doing really well. And she, like, it consumes all of her time. And whenever she has kids, she has a family, and I don't think she spends much time doing these other things. And she just thrives. She loves her business so much because it's meeting all of her needs at really high levels. And when she looks at other areas of her life, I think she feels like, well, my needs aren't being met at those high levels. And whenever you have something in your life that's meeting your needs at high levels, you're going to develop an addiction to it. You're going to want it. You're going to pursue it. There's not going to be any resistance to pursuing it. And so when your work, your business, what you do for a living meets your needs at high levels, it becomes effortless. It becomes what you want to do all day. And then I think, though, the key is realizing that even though I love doing this, maybe I do need to take some time aside so that I can focus on some of these other areas of my life and make those areas amazing and incredible too, because I've mastered this area. I know this area really well, and I'm saying that I don't want to spend time doing these other things only because they don't fulfill me in the same way, or only because I fear them. There's an underlying fear of like, oh, it's going to require effort. It's different, and I think you have to look at your life really. You have to really look at your life and keep score and think, okay, what area is really dropping right now?
You have to be honest with yourself and ask yourself, am I avoiding something?
Yes.
Am I avoiding my relationship by saying to myself, oh, I need to make more money. I need to focus on my business. But really it's because you feel insignificant in your relationship. You feel
don't want to go home.
You don't have control in your relationship. So, if you look at, let's say, the 6 human needs that Tony Robbins talks about, there's certainty, there's variety, there's significance, there's love, there's growth, and there's contribution. Those 6 needs. And many cases, in your business, the needs that you meet are certainty. You have a sense of security, a sense of control over that, versus your relationship with your kids. You don't really have as much control. In your business, you're like a dictator, right? You call the shots, you get it, control everything. In a relationship, you don't have that. It's more of a democracy. You have to negotiate. There's another person, other people involved in that. So many times people feel more certainty than they do in their business or their job than they do in their relationship, or maybe they feel uncertain, they feel not enough, or whatever it is. You get more variety in some cases because in the business, your job, so many things that you can do, all these things happening, versus at home can feel like, kind of boring, or, not as much things that stimulate you. You feel more significance in some cases from your business because you have all these employees and customers, they look up to you. You feel like you're making things happen, versus at home, maybe in your marriage, again, something you could be avoiding is like, you don't feel significant to your partner. They don't put you on that pedestal. They don't compliment you. They don't praise you. They're, like all of those things.
Or oftentimes, like a lot of moms, they want to pursue a business because they feel like their job as a mother is not being rewarded. It's not being recognized.
Just a mom.
I'm just a mom. And if they were to pursue a career or a business, then they would really be recognized.
Yeah, you go to like an event or whatever, and people say, "Oh, what do you do?" And you're like, "Oh, I'm just a mom."
Yeah, so they don't feel significant.
But if you said, "Oh, I have this business," they're like, "Oh, wow!" Like they're going to respond to you
and
differently because our society values,
yes.
success.
Which is a shame because really, I feel like being a mother is the greatest,
it's the most significant job in the world.
It is. It's like you're raising a human being. Trying to do that with your business.
Yeah, and other needs as well. Connection and love. You can meet that through your business. Growth.
Can meet a lot of needs.
You're growing a lot. So it's your business, your job, your career. Oftentimes becomes something that many people are consumed by, also because they're trying to escape and avoid. They're good at it. You feel competent. You just have all these needs being met. Versus at home, it's an area of your life that might be weaker, and maybe there's not that passion, that excitement, or maybe it's whatever else. And so you have to, I think, have the awareness of that and to say, okay, you know what? My relationship is really the most important thing. That's the foundation for my family. That's, I want to set an example for our kids. Like one thing that I love with Lucas is we consciously spend a lot of time holding each other, kissing each other, hugging each other. And we want Lucas to see that. We want our kids to see what love is. We want them to see the parents happy together. That has a powerful imprint on the psyche of that child so that they grow up and they value that and they know what love is. And they don't just, only get that from their parents, but they can see another dynamic of that and the role model from that.
And he loves it. He always has a big smile when he sees us.
Yeah. So, like that, like it's so important. So, There are ways, of course, though, that you can meet your needs outside your business. And that's hard when that is the source of your needs. And that's why you have to be careful to realize this and how to rebalance yourself. And I think so much of the success world, the success niche, the self-help books you read, the YouTube videos, etc., is conditioning you. It's programming you to be, as we described, these uber productive, ultra efficient human beings, or human doings, I should say. But you also have to recognize there will be a time where you maybe have to deprogram yourself from a lot of that. And you have to recognize the beliefs that you created that support you in being successful that might not support you in being as fulfilled as you want to be. And that's kind of the journey that we've been on, is reprogramming, reconditioning ourselves, rebalancing ourselves, finding ways to meet our needs in many different ways, which is very challenging at first. But one of the things I've loved about being retired, and just to clarify, over the last year or so, like I was in a position where creating content every week and having all these employees, and pretty much over a couple years, let go of a lot of my employees, just have one customer support rep, have, video editor and whatnot whenever we need it. But just simplifying to the point where my business, I spend maybe no more than a couple hours a month on it. So it's more administrative type stuff and maintenance stuff, but not really, there's a stretch. I haven't published a video on YouTube for like 5 months, like haven't done really much in business. And, but the gift of that has been what's allowed us is kind of opened up all this time to then spend doing things that we never would have done before, doing things that have brought so much joy and fulfillment to our lives, getting into all the different hobbies, trying things that we never did, getting into tennis and golf and piano and going for walks on the beach and swimming in the pool and building a house, all the spiritual development that we've done and the books we've read, and being present, in the moment in our lives, and all these other things that when I look at it, like that's really what life's about. Life is about enjoying each day and being happy and being fulfilled. And, I think one thing I remember being conflicted with this idea of retirement is oftentimes people say, well, if you're going to retire, then you're just going to wither away, and I remember like insurance companies, the statistics show that men, when they retire, they end up dying several years after. And so I used to be more in the mindset, like I'll never retire, like I'm always going to be go, go, go. But then I realized business, a job, work is not the only way to keep yourself engaged in life. It's not the only way. I think the main thing is to be challenged in life, to have goals and still have things that challenge you, because otherwise, if you don't challenge yourself, you will wither away. If you just sit in the bed or on a couch all day, your muscles will atrophy. Yeah, they'll atrophy and deteriorate because you're not fighting against the resistance of gravity. And so for me, though, what I looked at it as, there's many ways that I can still challenge myself. Physically going to the gym, getting different activities, building a house. Obviously having kids is very challenging. Starting new things, learning a new language. All of those things are ways that you can still challenge yourself and keep yourself engaged. And so I don't really experience boredom in a sense, because for me, like there's so many things that I feel like even now with all this time not working, I want to do. Like I feel like personally, like, man, we just built this house. There's so many parts of it that I'm not yet enjoying. I gotta use my sauna more. I'm not using the cold plunge enough, man. I'm not using the beach enough. I got a stand-up paddleboard right there. I've only used it once. I've got 2 kayaks. We haven't taken out the kayaks yet. I've got a golf course right here. I haven't been on the golf course, a
lot of FOMO.
Tennis and like, but my point being, like, sometimes people are like, aren't you bored? Like, what do you do all day if you're retired? Like, there's countless things to do that I'd like to do. And so that's not really an issue. It's great to though be in a position where it's like that's a high quality problem. That's a first world luxury problem to have so much time, but there's so much life to live and to experience that, but I think like that's what life's about. It's about living life rather than just being consumed on the rat race, doing things that don't bring the most fulfillment and joy to your life. And I think taking steps away from business and rebalancing have been one of the most valuable, most conscious things that we did. And yes, we don't make as much money. We don't have as many views. We're not as popular now. But to be able to let that go and overcome the fears of that have been also a very powerful growth and spiritual experience as well. Mm-hmm. And so I wouldn't trade that for anything. And it's not to say that, now like we're doing a podcast and, maybe some projects we'll do in the future and business opportunities, etc. But we're doing it from a very different place. We're not doing it because we're addicted to it. We're not doing it because we're trying to, get somewhere from it. We're doing it out of passion and love or contribution or growth. The reasons of which ultimately I think we all want to get to as the why of why you're doing what you're doing, and doing it because you want to rather than because you have to. Mm-hmm. And I think you get consumed in this world where you're like, I have to do this. You feel the pressure, the stress, and the responsibility of that. And I think for both of us, our businesses became that, where it's like, man, I have to put out a video this week. I have to send an email to my list. I have to say yes to this opportunity because of a financial gain that it's going to give you, rather than, what do I really want to do with my day, with my time, with my life? And that's real freedom, mm-hmm. Freedom of choice and time. Yeah. Human beings,
we need a purpose. Mm-hmm. And it's until the day we die, we need to have a purpose for our life. Young people are always looking for their purpose, looking outside of themselves for their purpose, which is the wrong place to look. But we're all looking for purpose and meaning in life. And if you retire, sometimes you lose that purpose, especially if you had a lifelong career. It feels like you've really lost your purpose in life. So I think that if you do retire, it is important to continue to challenge yourself, like you said, but also continue to find purpose in your life. And
I think that's probably one of the most challenging parts, is the change in identity.
Yes.
An identity crisis that you can have, and especially I think being a mom too. It's a different identity that you're taking on, and you can feel like you're very attached to your old identity.
Yeah.
And you want to preserve that identity, and you don't want to lose it. There's fear when you lose a part of that identity. And ultimately, it's realizing that you're not defined by a career, or by a certain amount of money. It's not having your self-worth and who you are. You are so much more than that. And stripping away and letting go of these self-definitions that we create for ourselves, these belief systems, which can serve you in many regards, but can also limit you in others. Mm-hmm. And so it's being aware of how we formulate these beliefs and not being too attached to being a certain person or being a certain way. And being willing to reinvent yourself, finding a new purpose. Mm-hmm. And it's definitely can be challenging. It can be
and nothing is permanent, and realizing that there's nothing permanent about life. Life is meant to be ever flowing, unending. I mean, the universe is constantly expanding. There's no ceiling that you're going to hit. And realizing that there's nothing about you that's permanent, from the hairs on your head to the cells, your skin is constantly renewing its cells, like everything about you. I think every 7 years you're like biologically a totally different person. So not holding on to any identity, to any way of being, realizing that tomorrow is a new day, that anything new is possible.
You can be anyone you want to be. Yeah.
Anyone you want to be. And
the next moment, this moment,
yes.
You have a choice to make a different decision, to think differently, to be differently, but we're holding on to and still attached to our old identity and beliefs and comfort zone and all of that. But when you realize that this moment, you can be anyone you want to be, that's very empowering.
Yeah, it's liberating. It's realizing that the past is the past, and it's only the present. It's only the future if you choose to hold on to it, if you choose to not let go. And so if you want to create a new present and a new future for yourself, I mean, the future doesn't exist. So really a new present for yourself, it's deciding, I'm going to let go of that, and I'm going to recognize that I'm renewed, I'm new, I'm whole, and I'm going to choose. I'm going to live my life on purpose. And yeah.
Just to wrap up soon, what would you say for you now as a mom? Talk a little bit about the identity shift, and also some of the new ways that you are meeting your needs, because you were, the Tatiana James on YouTube, and obviously you have a lot of views and subscribers, etc. And as we just described, many women can struggle with the significance of being a mom. But one thing that I've observed from you is you obviously have gone through some challenges with that, but also like you've taken a lot of pride and significance in being a mom and seeing how developed Lucas is, the results of that, and also the significance. Like you, for example, cook a lot, prepare meals a lot. And, I'm more in the mindset of outsourcing a lot of that stuff because, I'm not a big fan of cooking. But for you, it's like the significance of like you're going through, an online course about nutrition and all these things because you feel a sense of significance being able to give that gift of health and vitality and well-being to your family and be able to provide that. And like, can you just talk a little bit about that for yourself?
Yeah. Well, I would say, of course, the transition from being, who I have known myself to be all these years to now becoming a mom, it's a major transition in life. It is the butterfly, the caterpillar who turns into a butterfly. I literally, when a caterpillar turns into a butterfly, their face literally splits in half and they shed their entire body. There's nothing of their previous body that exists. They become a totally new transformed self. And I think that's what happens to every woman who becomes a mother. Mm-hmm. And I think where the suffering comes in is in the attachment to that previous identity, the identity that's gone. It's you can't grab hold of it. It's gone. You've now become a butterfly and you haven't realized that you're a butterfly yet. You don't realize how beautiful you are. You can't see yourself, but you're searching for your previous identity. And I think the key is to let go of that. The sooner that you let go of that attachment, the more quickly you're going to realize your new potential, and the more quickly you're going to realize that you have a new identity that you can now create for yourself. And so at first I was holding on. I thought I could still be that Tatiana James who was before having a child. I thought I could still be her. I thought there was parts of me that would change, parts of my life that would change, but I could still have some of that past. And society also told me, oh, you shouldn't let go of everything. You shouldn't, give up everything for your child. Like, you want to have something for yourself. But I was like, I realized that that's not true. Like you do change. Everything about you changes. Every cell in your body, the way you think, you become mom. And so I gave up on that old Tatiana James and I was like, okay, that's not who I am anymore. And that's a good thing. That's a blessing. I'm now so much more. And I realized I'm Tatiana James 2.0. I'm Tatiana James, who's now a mother, and becoming a mother has given me so many new qualities. Like I said earlier, one of those qualities is being this like fierce mama bear. There's this fierceness within me, this fire within me that I didn't have before, where it's like, threaten my child in any way and, it will be the end of you. not literally, but, like there's this like toughness in me. There's this like, this fighter in me now that I didn't have before. And I'm actually really respecting that. And I'm seeing the value in that. And there's also this really caring and nurturing side of me that's come out. I've always been that way, but way more so. Like I don't actually like cooking, but this nurture within me is so strong that I'm like, I'm going to damn well learn how to cook because I want to provide the most nutritious meals for my family, and I love what's rewarding is just seeing how it is. I am creating, like yesterday I made a gluten-free bread, homemade bread for you guys, and it tasted delicious. And it's like I'm putting dinner on the table, and it feels good. And it's not just like a quick meal. So there's a lot of qualities now that I'm forming a new identity. I'm not quite there yet where I really know who I am. I don't think I ever fully know because I'm always transforming. I'm always changing. For you to say, I love you for who you are, what that really does is it puts me inside a box saying, never change, because I love you for who you are now, not realizing that every day I'm growing, every day I'm changing. Who I am next week, who I am a month from now is going to be different than who I am now. So really, I'm kind of piecing together this new version of me and taking my time to do it and appreciating all these new sides of me, appreciating how I'm so much more present in my day. Like I used to be so impatient because it was all about productivity for me. And now it's like, when you have a toddler, he's loving, he just wants to walk everywhere. You really have to hold his finger. He holds my finger and I walk around and, half an hour goes by where we're just walking around and he's looking at the bushes and stuff. And it's like, okay, bring in presence to this moment. And like, I actually think I'm so much wiser, so much greater, so much more conscious because of him. And that's why I feel like children are really a great gift, and children are spiritual teachers for us because they do help us to slow down. They do help us to realize, become more in alignment with ourselves. And they show us this light. They have this twinkle in their eye, this spirit within them that's so alive, so new, so fresh. And we recognize that. And that's why I think so many people love babies and love kids, because they see that and they see the beauty of them, that soul. They say the eye is the window to the soul.
Programming and just pure consciousness.
Yes, and they're just so open and free. There's nothing that's hindering them.
There's no identity that they've formulated for themselves yet.
And like I was saying earlier, when you're consciousness attracts people, right? And you're going to become an attractor to everything you want in your life. A child, the reason that we're so attracted to a child is because we see how conscious they are. And we are ourselves as conscious human beings. We want that. We want to become more conscious. That's our lifelong goal, unconsciously or not, is this goal to become more in alignment with our source, with who we are. And so, so I recognize that, and I'm like, wow, this is so amazing. He's so amazing, and I'm learning so much from him. And I don't even remember what you asked me.
Yeah. Well, I think also the spiritual growth and the direction of going in, we're not even, we all have these needs, and the need to be significant, and in that previous life, that was maybe more of a dominant need, and you still meet that need now as a mom, as taking care of the family and all these other things, even doing a podcast like this, reconnecting with publishing everything once in a while. It's a way to meet that. But as you continue to grow spiritually, you're not as driven by the need to feel significant. You're not as driven by the need to feel certain and in control of things. You are more free just to and comfortable with yourself, secure within yourself, that, hey, I don't need to prove anything. I don't need to make more money. I don't need to have all these followers or, things like that in my life. Great. It's great to inspire and share and give and contribute, but I'm doing it from a much more different place. And it sounds like you've been able to reevaluate your identity, recreate your identity into this new one, but it's a new one. This Tatiana James 2.0 is a more complete, more full, more whole, more balanced version of yourself. And then maybe that's not like what against society, because one thing that is always interesting is I think a lot of women can be put on a pedestal who are like these super entrepreneur moms, like they have 3-4 kids and they're like a multimillionaire, and like you see them out in the world like running these massively successful businesses while also being parents. But you're only really seeing one side of the story, one side of the picture, because again, in society, we're going to overvalue people that have success. And when you attach mom to that, you automatically might assume, oh, wow, like that's great that you're also a mom. That's amazing. But you don't necessarily know what, how involved are you as a mom? Like, do you just basically have,
you don't know what the costs are.
Yeah. Yes, you can be a super successful mom entrepreneur, but then have, never be present in your children's lives, have housekeepers and nannies and all that, take care of that, not have a great relationship with your husband, not really be optimizing your health, your spiritual development, living in the present moment, all those other things. And so, there's trade-offs and there's certain things like that. And unfortunately, society doesn't necessarily acknowledge or value as much someone who I guess has it all and has that balance, because you can't really measure happiness and a great marriage and a great, being a great mom. Like those are things that you can't really quantify in the same way as you can having a successful business and having a lot of money. So it's like if you are going to go down that path, that is the more fulfilling, the more spiritual path, you can't be concerned about what society thinks of you, because society will always kind of keep you in that level of consciousness that is consumed by ego, materialism, like all of what society tells you what success is, rather than defining what your own success is going to be and pursuing that regardless of what everyone else thinks, regardless of whether or not the world gives you any props or any significance for what you're doing or how you're being. But you know within yourself, I'm living true to myself. I'm living the life that I want to live. And it doesn't matter how, what other people think of that.
Yeah. And I mean, also it's recognizing that it's a very cultural thing. When you travel, this is a great learning that you have, is you realize that different cultures do things differently, and different cultures don't value success in the same hardcore way that we do in North America. And realizing that, it's just one way of life. And I do think it is, it's a shame that moms oftentimes don't feel significant enough just being mom, because again, it is the most significant role. But my wish is that moms can recognize how significant that position is, and how great that responsibility is. And I wish that society would honor moms more for that. And there's a lot of great mom bosses out there, and I think that's fantastic. I'm all for that. But don't be naive into thinking that any of these women have done it by themselves. The women who do have these really large businesses, are building these empires, they have a whole team of people to support them. They have nannies, they have chefs, they have chauffeurs, they have their husband oftentimes stays at home and watches the kids, so it's a switch of roles. Very few cases have I ever seen where it's like the mom is not only building an empire, but also is at home doing the traditional role of a mom. So it's just realizing that don't fall into the illusion that you can have it all, because usually you can't.
Well, it's interesting because I think and I think you've been through this as well. You see these figures and you want to be like them, right? Like, especially when you're younger, you're like, I want to be like Tony Robbins. I want to be like Barbara Corcoran, from Shark Tank. I want to because you see, or the celebrity, maybe you see the celebrity, you're like, wow, I want to be like them. But as you get closer to being like them, you actually then realize certain things that maybe you couldn't really see or understand initially. And that for me was really humbling and eye-opening. And even for example, for me, there's a stage in my life I wanted to model Tony Robbins. And he was my father figure. He was like my idol growing up. And so I wanted to be like him. But as I've had a chance to meet him and I've gone down that path, and also kind of come into my own and learn about myself more, I've actually come to accept and be okay with no, I don't want to be that. I want to be my own self. I want to live my life differently in these different ways. And, for example, Tony Robbins, he's like this larger than life person. There comes a lot of trade-off with the way that he's decided to live his life, of not being as present in his kids' lives, or, having so many employees and the stresses that can come with that, the responsibility that comes with that, a variety of things that maybe you don't initially realize until, again, you've kind of experienced some of that. And now that I've gone in that direction and built a big business and all of that, those experiences have been incredibly valuable, because now I've been able to take from that and make the decision of how I really want to live my life, and modify my vision and my values to one that is more fulfilling for me. And I remember for you, there was also a stage where you're like, wow, I want to be like that girl, that woman who, but then I think as you've matured and now also having a child, you've been able to, no, actually, I wouldn't want to trade places with that person. I wouldn't want to be that famous and go through what they're going through, or whatever it is. So I think that's really valuable, that comes through maturity and development and spiritual development and all that, is that you can be who you really truly want to be, rather than what you believe is going to make you feel the most significant, or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow, this has been a really great episode. It's been a lot of different topics we've covered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been fun. Yeah, it's really interesting to discuss these things and to go deep in these ways. But I think it's good to be aware and conscious and to think about these things about our lives in this journey and the path that we're all on. And it's a continuous journey. And who knows where we'll all be a decade from now and further. So
it's becoming harder and harder to plan the future.
Yes.
I mean, you really can't even plan 3 years from now just because of how quickly technology is evolving. So yeah, I mean, you do your best to have a plan, to have a vision, and just realize, be open. Things are going to change, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But have some direction.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to wrap it up. And so thank you guys so much for your time today. Always a pleasure to connect with you guys. Of course, subscribe and hit the like button on YouTube if you're watching this. Tatiana James, you can find her on YouTube, and then Project Life Mastery on YouTube, as well as you search anywhere for your podcast, Project Life Mastery or Tatiana James. And we hope that you guys continue to listen to more. If there's any questions that you guys have, share them in the comments, and we'll, as we do more videos and episodes like this, we'll dive more into specific questions that you guys have in a whole variety of different topics that we want to get into at different points, whether that's health, relationships, again, more business, finances, whatever it is. Happy to share and discuss a whole variety of different things. So,
All right. I'll see you later.
All right. Thanks, guys. Take care.